The crowd swarms in, their faces twisted between heartbreaking sorrow and a grim, can't-look-away curiosity. Everyone's eyes lock onto the central plaza, where the city's about to put on a non-stop public spectacle. The scribes are already at their posts and their quills are going wild, scratching the page at full speed to capture every single second leading up to what's about to happen. Heavy chains get hauled out, a brutal warning that total control has arrived. The official record is getting penned right now, like it was always meant to end this way. From the prisoner's eyes, everything smears into a blur of faces, like the whole world is watching his final moments unfold on stage. The chains snap tight, sealing his fate with a cold, final grip. A lone figure gets hauled up the steps, and you can practically see his spirit shattered. They said these chains aren't just restraints, they're the real deal, built to lock away his powers for good. They call him a demon's weapon, but all he can see are the faces of everyone he let down. They haul him before a faceless mob, the same people he's being condemned for. He blurts out in sheer desperation, begging for answers. What did he do wrong? From a nearby rooftop, a well-dressed man launches into a speech, and the crowd instantly turns against him. He grips a weird, glowing orb in his hand, and a smug grin stretches across his face. His words landed like a punch. He demanded to know whether our boy ever really understood the people's suffering. Or maybe the accuser presses on, there's a whole different reason behind his actions. Then boom, a surge of pure power rips the special chains apart, shattering them completely. The explosion blasts him backward, sending him skidding across the stage like a thrown rocket. He topples off the platform, disappearing from sight in the blink, while the guillotine waits, silent and deadly. The accuser's words still sting in his ears as he slams down hard on the wooden planks. He lifts his eyes, no rage at all, just crushing self-doubt, wondering if all this pain is happening because he did nothing. From the stage, a familiar figure whirls around and stares back, expression icy, like he's miles away. And our boy stares in disbelief as he whispers it, his brother Arthur. A long-forgotten memory crashes back, kneeling in front of that very same man, back when the past still felt alive. He remembers begging for his life, and right there, we finally discover his name. Mordred. He still can't forget the disappointment blazing in his brother's eyes. Arthur's words from that day slam into his mind, you don't get people's hearts. And right now, his brother turns his back, no comfort, no escape, just cold silence. As they haul him back toward the guillotine, Mordred finally realizes what's happening. He remembers being shoved from place to place, hearing them yell that if he got hurt, it was his fault. Was just another round in the game, while that cruel smiling face watched, grinning like it loved every second. And now he finally gets it, how brutally agonizing that pain really is. And somehow nobody ever taught him that lesson, like it got skipped on purpose. He just had to listen to the people in power, and then everything would finally fall into place. A memory that still burns, betrayal, and that gutting moment when they tossed him aside like he didn't matter. Right as his life flashes before his eyes, one sharp thought slams into his mind. His head is pinned in place, and he glares straight into the void. If only he could get one more shot, wipe the slate clean, and do it all over again. And the executioner's words seal it. This is where his whole story ends. He's finally being asked, so, got any last words you want to leave behind? But Mordred has truly nothing left, he just swallows his fate in silence. The rope snaps and the blade crashes down like a thunderclap. A lightning-fast, merciless end slammed down on the condemned man. The crowd erupts in shocked gasps as the official story plays out right before their eyes. His last thought wasn't regret at all, it was the brutal realization of just how much it would sting. Then he rockets upright with a scream, and his whole body shakes like crazy. He's not on some execution stage at all, he's sprawled on the floor of a lavish room, the guillotine nowhere in sight, and somehow his life has been wiped clean and reset. He can only mutter one word of pure confusion. He's back in his childhood room, and somehow he looks way younger. He slaps his chest, and it hits him in real time, he's alive. But even now, the revolution's memories burn bright, pure chaos, and their home getting looted to pieces. He stares out the window at the castle from his past, the one that got burned to the ground. Overwhelmed, he drops to the floor and fights to catch his breath. He reels from remembering how he lost everything in a nightmare that felt way too real. Suddenly, a bunch of maids burst in, beaming at him like sunshine and greeting him with bright, cheerful smiles. But they don't call him Mordred, they call him Arthur. The second they shout that breakfast is ready, his face lights up like a sunrise, pure, unstoppable delight. He flashes back to the prison food from his dream, watery soup that tasted like nothing and stale bread that crumbled in his hands. That sudden silence in the hall yanks him right back into the moment. He clears his throat and tries to wave the execution off like it was nothing but a weird nightmare. He stares up at his brother's portrait, absolutely convinced that a guy like Arthur would never, ever end up on the execution block. A surge of joy crashes over him as he pictures the incredible life he's destined to live. His weird behavior talking to a portrait confuses the maids so badly they're left totally stunned. They trade anxious looks, totally stunned, not a clue what to think of that outburst. Because he's Arthur, one name that demands respect and keeps him safe. He flashes back to a childhood lesson: never ever look at the commoners. The maids shouted at him again, yanking him right out of his drifting memories. The staff is freaking out over something, like whatever's happening has them on the edge. A panicked chef blurts out that the delivery got delayed, so breakfast is officially without bread. But Arthur suddenly snapped. He had a brilliant idea, and even the others were stunned. He grins and says, "No bread, then let's just grab some cake." He's practically glowing with pride over his simple, elegant solution. This is the life fate handed him, where every twist of luck turns in his favor. He swears this is his brand new, amazing reality, and he's not backing down. But behind his back, the maids lean in and start whispering like they're sharing a secret. They're bringing up that weird outburst he pulled earlier, specifically his tone-deaf "just eat cake" suggestion. Their whispers trail him like a curse, reminding everyone that royalty comes with a price, and it's not a good one. Overwhelmed, he snaps them off and bolts back, declaring he's heading straight to his room. Then he whips around and bolts through the garden, and the staff shout after him as he disappears, while the maids can only stare, one of them finally sure she hadn't imagined his weird behavior. He bursts into his chambers and slams the doors shut behind him. He thought this would be the blessed life, the perfect dream he'd finally get to live. So he stumbles to the floor, panicking, and keeps asking himself why everything is falling apart. The truth is buried in the vivid memories of his past life as Mordred. He can't figure out why that brutal, hellish life still latches onto him. Even now, eyes locked on his own hands, pure terror swallowing him whole. He reaches out like he can't afford to lose this fragile new reality. But his eyes are blown wide with a terror he can't even put into words. He clamps his eyes shut, desperately trying to silence those terrifying visions. But that darkness yanks him deeper and deeper into the memories of his past life. He stares at the uprising again. Commoners crash the gates, blazing with fire and armed with nothing but steel. A tidal wave of fury crashed through his life, smashing everything he'd ever known to pieces. He snaps back to himself as Mordred, standing calm while everything around him erupts into chaos. He could still hear his name shouted as a warning, too late to save him. He remembers getting seized while he screamed in defiance, dragged away like they had no choice. And it all crashes back, crushing despair, like he's been abandoned by the one person he trusted with everything. That old name claws its way back into his mind, Mordred. He can't shake the question of why the revolution was happening at all. He even pitched handing cash to the commoners. He thought it was the clean, simple answer. And all he ever got back was mocking laughter and crushing pain. He can't stop himself. He turns to his brother and demands to know what any of it was even supposed to mean. He still remembers the gut punch panic. He woke up and their fortune was gone overnight. And all Arthur could do was snap. What horrible things did Mordred do to deserve this? Nobody had answers, just a flood of excuses after everyone had already bolted. He remembers begging his brother, utterly shattered, like his world had just collapsed. But in the end, Arthur's final verdict hit like a hammer. He'd never change. It yanks him straight back into his imprisonment, where agony never stopped, and pain kept grinding him down day after day. He remembers choking on air, gasping on that cold stone floor. A guard would heckle him, sneering, "So you finally get what the people are going through." They'd just dump him there and yell "Arthur" like he was his brother over and over. He clings to the accuser's words, sneering at him like his power was right there, just out of reach. The crushing weight of those memories slams him into a full-blown panic spiral. After the revolution, they tossed him into a cell, and day after day the people he once ruled tormented him with a vengeance. And somehow he still remembers that mysterious girl who slipped into his cell and tended every wound. She dropped to her knees, smiled softly, and asked him right then if he was hurting. And he's absolutely certain, ice cold, that none of it was a dream. This is real, a memory he can't escape. He clenches his teeth, and the terrifying truth finally crashes into him. Right then, a gentle voice cut through the air and called out, "Arthur." It rips him right back to that moment, the girl on her knees, staring at him and asking why he'd ended up on the floor. And there she stands in front of him, maid's uniform, dead-eyed stare, quietly asking if he's hurting. The exact same question she'd thrown at him in that freezing, pitch-dark cell. He jerks his head up in pure terror, because it's her, the same woman he saw back in prison. That brutal shock slams into him. She's been one of his maids the whole time. He instinctively stumbles back from her shadowy figure, but she just stares down, a stone-cold face as she shuts down his fear without a word. Arthur yells at her to back up, because the past and the present crash together, and terror hits like a tidal wave. He scrambles backward and his breath snaps up in his throat. In a blind rush, he lunges forward and sends a tray of tea crashing to the floor. Hot liquid erupts across the maid's uniform, splattering every inch. Arthur snaps his finger up and explodes, screaming that it's all her fault. He scrambles to justify his outburst, insisting it was nothing more than self-defense. But the maid calmly raises her hand and reads the scalding tea like it's no big deal. Arthur freezes as the reality of what he just did finally crashes down on him. He snaps his gaze aside, desperate to dodge the blame for the injury she suffered. His thoughts spiral and he can't shake the question, why is it her who's the one hurting him like this? And for the first time, he spots real pain flash across her face. Instead of flinching at her own pain, the maid shoots her hand out and asks, breathless, if he's all right. Arthur can only lock eyes and freeze, utterly stunned and totally lost for words. A sudden click of understanding flashes across her face. She tries to make it crystal clear, this fear isn't only about him. He squeezes his head in pain, and the woman from his past crashes back into his mind. The same person who'd shown up for him in that freezing, pitch-black prison cell. That terrifying connection hits him like a nightmare, and he spirals straight into a full-blown panic. He's crushed under the weight of brutal memories from his past life. He can't wrap his head around it, why those ghosts still cling to him now that he's finally supposed to be Arthur. He grips his chest, stunned by a phantom pain from a life he's not even living anymore. She studies him with real worry, asking straight up if he's the one suffering. Arthur is totally stunned by her question. He shrugs it off and insists through clenched teeth that he's totally fine. But then his attention snaps to her, and he demands to see her injured hand. He reaches out carefully and takes it, and at last a soft apology slips out of his mouth. He stares at the burn and knows it's going to hurt like hell. Then he declares loud and proud that this is his special ability. With a blinding flash, he vows he'll heal her right now. A power he finally realizes is healing magic, and it changes everything. Once the wound's gone, he beams and gives her a proud head pat, satisfied he nailed it. He leans in and asks if the pain is finally gone, grinning like he just solved everything himself. But she's totally rattled, insisting he can't use that kind of power on her. She snaps that his magic is too precious to ever be wasted on some lowly maid. The idea of Prince Arthur unleashing his gift for her sake hits so hard it's almost unbearable. Arthur snaps his head away and mutters under his breath that he's the one who caught her off guard. But she calls out to him again, and her face softens as she does. He whips his gaze back, clutches his chest, and admits the moment he sees her, his heart is crushed with pain. Her cheeks blaze red when he drops that sudden, unexpected confession. Thinking his words were something else, she bolts out of the room, panicking like crazy. The door slammed shut, trapping Arthur in silence as he stared at that wildly noisy maid, wondering what she was up to. He stares at his own hand, realizing this is the very first time he's ever healed a commoner. His mind rockets back to a lesson from when he was a kid, his tutor looming over him like a storm. He broke it down for everyone. His healing power wasn't just useful, it was a priceless gift. They told him to think hard about how to use it, and he soaked up the lesson with a smug grin. The tutor's question didn't feel like an option, it hit like an order. They drilled into him that his magic was only to be used when someone in power told him to, like a weapon meant for their command. Right now, he yanks a book off the shelf, and that lesson's weight still clings to him like a bruise. After all, it was what he'd been trained to do, plain and simple. He decides he'll tell his tutor about the incident with the maid later. But just as he's about to slide the book back, something weird snaps his attention. It's a battered, torn-up book, nothing like the rest sitting there on the shelf. He finally snaps to it. This isn't a spellbook at all, it's some kind of personal notebook, meant just for one person. Flipping open that very first page, he realizes this diary is dated to the year 21. But the first entry slams down a dark prophecy, sparks a revolution, and ends with Arthur Pendragon getting executed. That terrifying prediction slams straight into his own nightmare memories, like the past and the future are colliding. He shrieks, then whips the diary across the room in pure panic. He just can't wrap his mind around a future this twisted and brutally morbid. A thick, heavy silence hangs over the library as he glares at the book someone threw aside. He tries to stride off, desperate to bury what he just witnessed. But an irresistible curiosity yanks him around, and his heart hammers like it's trying to break free. He frantically whips through the pages, his hands shaking like they're about to give out. The pages blaze with the revolution's triumph, and the moment Prince Arthur is seized. And it even straight up names the year he died, at just 20 years old. With every page he flips, the sweat on his brow turns icy. He reads about what the guillotine did, and a terrified scream bursts from his mouth. He just freezes on the spot, the confirmation of his darkest fears crushing him to the bone. Right then, an hourglass from the shelf nearby slips, tumbles, and smacks straight onto his head. That hard jolt hits him like a wake-up call, and suddenly he starts thinking straight. When the hourglass smashes onto the floor, he finally snaps. This was never a dream. He grabs his head like it's exploding, then the terrifying truth slams into him. Time itself has been reversed. Dread hits him like a wave. He realizes with rising horror that this isn't just a story anymore, but the fate waiting to slam into his life. In that future, he pays for everything. His head drops to the guillotine. He can't shake the question. There has to be a way to dodge this brutal outcome. He lunges for the diary and yanks it back, and a desperate plan snaps into place in his head. He's got to figure out what's going on, no matter what it costs him. Meanwhile, the maids are still huddled together, trading loud gossip about everything that just happened. Whispers rocket through the castle halls like sparks in the dark. That maid Arthur healed is still stunned, and she's telling the tale to anyone who will stop and listen. And just like that, her story finally slams into the ears of Goyoku, the prince's own personal tutor. Goyoku leans in with a smug grin, eyes sparkling as he soaks up the rumors swirling around Prince Arthur. He storms straight up to the maid, furious, accusing her of using her body to seduce the young prince. She twists in his grip, fighting tooth and nail as she desperately rejects the filthy accusation. But the tutor's authority crushes everything, so the other maids freeze, staring in silent, terrified awe. They're stuck whispering to each other, helpless and unable to lift a finger. Goyoku slams the point home. Defying the nobility is a crime no one survives. The maid still remembers them pressuring her to use the prince, and the idea makes her recoil in pure disgust. Right then, Arthur himself storms in, demanding to know what the hell they're saying about him. His sudden burst onto the scene triggers a fresh wave of panic in the shocked staff watching him. Goyoku's face snaps from shock to a slick, cunning realization. The maid blurts his name, totally stunned by how he suddenly popped up. Goyoku scrambles to fix the mess fast, insisting it was nothing more than a tiny little problem. But Arthur breaks it down. He wasn't being cruel. He was just ripping into the maid for what she pulled earlier. He tells her, "Don't stress, I've got this," like he understands every single detail perfectly. Spotting his one shot to slip away, Goyoku starts scrambling for an excuse to cut himself out of the conversation. But Arthur slams to a stop in front of him and barks his name with a brand new kind of authority. Then he strides up to the crowd and declares, loud and clear, that he's a brand new man, fully reborn. Goyoku can't contain his curiosity, so he asks for a quick private chat. Arthur whips around to face him, eyes blazing, and demands to know what kind of business the tutor could possibly have with him. With a crooked little smirk, Goyoku claims everything he's doing is only to serve Prince Arthur. Arthur grins and cheerfully blurts that he wants to get his hands on the financial ledgers. Goyoku's expression twists into a greedy grin as he snatches the task with hungry excitement. The tutor grumbles that the prince needs to get his hands working, especially after his fiancée ripped him a new one. He looks like he's cooking up something huge, and a bead of sweat slides down his face as if he can't hold it in. Goyoku puts on an act of fake concern for Arthur's education, but the prince cuts him off with one simple message: don't worry. Then he offers to reward the tutor for all his hard work, and Goyoku is completely stunned. Meanwhile, the maid remembers it clearly. Arthur didn't just heal a burned hand, it was packed with calluses. Arthur jumps in out of nowhere, offers to heal the tutor's stiff shoulders, and shoves him into a chair. The tutor can only grimace, stuck in his thoughts as he realizes just how selfish that prince really is. Then Arthur's smile drops and he snaps that nobles almost never get hurt. Goyoku stands there, totally thrown off by the prince's words, while the maid watches from afar, lost in deep thought. Then out of nowhere, Arthur suddenly snaps back to a memory of the countess, one Goyoku once shoved into his life. A woman who had been crying out about unbearable agony ripping through her hands. He leans toward his tutor and demands to know whatever happened to her, and the thought in his eyes makes everything feel heavier. He still remembers the warning, heal her fast, because she came from a merchant family. A woman sat there all day counting money, way too weird for the younger version of him to even wrap his head around. Goyoku's panic spikes and he starts sweating, thinking Arthur's quiet stare means something way more dangerous. But Arthur yanks his hand and points out how brutally painful it looks. He runs his fingers over those calluses, and they line up with the Countess's perfectly. The tutor snaps quiet, and a bead of sweat slides down his cheek like it can't even wait. Goyoku gives a jittery little laugh and tells the prince, straight to his face, that he's being crueler than anyone could stand. Then he leans in close and drops the real twist: he comes from a merchant family too. But Arthur's face stays stone cold, calculation humming behind his eyes. His thoughts explode with one brutal word: liar. From the doorway, the maid scoffs at the pathetic scene. Then Arthur leans in and tells the tutor, every single coin I count each day, that money's mine. The accusation hangs there like a threat, and the maids suddenly snap it all together. He's talking about embezzlement. They instantly realize they just stumbled onto a conversation that could get them killed. Arthur steps in and offers to heal the tutor's dishonorable wound, flashing a sly smile as he goes. Then he slams the table and demands Goyoku hand over the financial ledgers, right now. Goyoku lifts his gaze off the floor and asks, why is the prince pulling that face? Arthur looms over him, declaring this is the start of a brand new life for a prince who's finally done being ignorant. He flashes a confident, almost cruel grin, savoring the power he just stole for himself. The tutor can barely get words out. Terror hits as Prince Arthur's sudden growth leaves him shaking. Arthur drops his voice and says with real warmth that he's genuinely thrilled to witness this change. Broken and humiliated, Goyoku scurries off into the shadows without a single word. The maids came charging to Arthur's side right away, showering him with praise for his absolute brilliant performance. They're still in shock. How could the prince snap at his tutor just to defend a lowly maid? But then boom, everyone's praise hits, and Arthur's face turns bright red as his nerves completely unravel. He tries to shoo them away, swearing up and down it's nothing special. He buries himself in the financial records, and then it hits him. Goyoku's been skimming off the top, and the amount is jaw-dropping. With a fresh surge of purpose, he orders the maids to stay on top of things, then bolts out in a hurry. They're stuck watching as he suddenly turns shy, and every last one of them is totally captivated. The maid he healed now looks at him with total respect, because she's finally seen what a genuinely kind person he really is. Later that night, the full moon blazed overhead as the world went quiet. Arthur steps into the royal garden and lets out a deep, exhausted sigh. He finally clears his head, but that bleak future and the diary's words still hammer on his mind. He tore through the pages in a panic, hunting for any shred of a clue, anything that could save him from his execution. Then whoosh, a savage gust tears the pages from his grip, and they explode across the ground like confetti. He can only stare in horror as those precious pages crash down into a nearby fountain. He crumples in defeat, and the pages of his future turn into a waterlogged, useless mess. A raw, desperate scream slices through the silent garden, like pure frustration given a voice. But when he scoops up the shredded pages, he spots something that makes his blood run cold. Goyoku's embezzlement entry gone, vanished from the book like it never existed. And right there, a fresh message hits. The future's been nudged just a little out of place. Then it hits him like a lightning strike. Every move he makes is already rewriting his fate. But he can't shake the thought, how could this tiny shift possibly derail the revolution that's already racing toward them? Or does fate still slam the door on him at the guillotine? He rips into a scream of frustration, convinced that changing something so small makes zero difference. From the pages, this creepy button-eyed thing stares at him in total silence, like it's waiting for him to look back. That creepy button-eyed thing rockets out of the pages out of nowhere. Arthur stumbles backward, totally blindsided by that bizarre creature. It's straight up pointing to the exact same maid he just healed. A fresh message pops up, claiming the maid's friend is gearing up to fight his execution. He flips through the diary, eyes locked on every line, absolutely sure this new info wasn't there before. The book throws his good deeds right into the spotlight and even hands him a point for every single one. He suddenly realizes his every move is scribbling over the future in real time. A fresh plan snaps into place. He's going to unleash his healing magic and sway the crowd to his side. And he throws everything he's got into it, ripping free from his execution at the last second. With his first step, he sweeps the shocked young woman into the role of his personal maid. His sudden declaration knocks the young maid speechless. News of his choice rockets through the entire estate like wildfire. The maid's thrown into full-blown panic, convinced this new job is nothing short of a death sentence. The other servants only dare to mutter that her career is already finished. She sobs as her short, plain life as a maid comes to an end. And just like that, she's summoned to face a hard-eyed woman who lays it all out, and confirms every fear she's been trying to ignore. The woman snaps at her, firing off questions like, "What in the world has gotten into you?" We finally meet Marion, the head maid. She snaps at her to pull herself together right then and there. The young maid can only choke out her name, trembling in pure desperation as everything falls apart. But the second she lays out what's going on, Marion's jaw drops because it turns out Prince Arthur himself made the request. Marion tells her that the prince appointing her himself is a massive show of trust, and the young maid nearly bursts with joy. But her smile vanishes in a second as she admits that even though it all started out great, it didn't last. She's still totally baffled by how he suddenly decided he needed to rack up good deeds. She replays Arthur laying out his plan, and she's left utterly stunned, like her brain just stopped working. He figured if he wanted the commoners on his side, he'd need someone they could talk to without fear. With a bright, hopeful smile, she stepped in and accepted the role of his personal maid. Arthur sprang into action on the spot, healing the injured servants one after another. The maid beams and cheers him on, praising how he pulled off a real good deed. But then it hits Arthur, this isn't what he wanted at all. He spins on his heel, blurts that he's heading back to his room, and storms out, leaving her standing there. She remembers the whole place lighting up with cheers, yet Arthur's face crumples with grief. The thought hits her like a trapdoor, and panic swallows her whole. She feels the weight of this new responsibility crushing her, like it's more than she can possibly carry. She can't stop replaying that heartbreaking look on his face. And that's when she forces herself to face a crushing conclusion. She leans in and tells Marion, "I don't think I can pull this job off." Honestly, she's got zero confidence to be his personal maid. Marion hears the confession, and her stern, unreadable face never blinks. Before he drove a sharp poke to her forehead, forcing her to snap out of it. The young maid gasps in shock and blurts out the head maid's name as she cranes her neck upward. Then he fired off a second poke, just to make sure the message slammed home. Marion tells him she's doing this for Arthur's sake, and because the maids need her too. She tells the girl that no matter what reason the prince had for picking her, they can't wrap their heads around it. But the young maid won't back down. She insists she still has to know. She has to figure out why Prince Arthur picked her, out of everyone, so she can read his mind, figure out what he wants, and help him reach it. Her fiery plea snaps the head maid completely speechless for a beat. Marion can't help but smile because she finally sees the prince is dragging his own crushing burdens around. And maybe that's exactly why he picked a girl so straightforward and so brutally honest. Then she drops the bombshell. Prince Arthur's own mother was a commoner too, and suddenly that young maid feels like a mirror of her past. The maid is left totally flustered, because the head maid's weird logic just won't quit. Marion pushes for Arthur to be spoiled rotten, maybe even treated like he's got a mom watching over him. The young maid's brain just snaps under the weight of all that pure, mind-bending confusion. Marion stammers out embarrassed that certain nobles have shockingly strange tastes. Then she shoves a tiny bag into the maid's hands and tells her, "Make it count, use what's inside, and give it everything you've got." With that, the head maid storms out, and the girl is left alone to chase her mysterious mission. She rips open the bag, and there it is, a delicate piece of clothing that leaves nothing to the imagination. Marion, cornered by her own bizarre scheme, can only blush bright red and swear. She insists it's nothing. But the maid swallows that advice like a command and bolts off to pamper the prince exactly the way she was told. She spots Arthur in the garden, and he doesn't waste time. He just leans in and asks what's wrong. He's still racking his brain over why the diary won't update, while the maid slips past behind him and steals her resolve. She suddenly pounces on him and declares she's going to pamper him like he's just a kid. Arthur just freezes, totally lost, as she shakes a rattle right in his face. He's totally stunned as she circles him, and she keeps shaking the toy like crazy. The noise crushed him, so he finally snapped, "Be quiet," to her. His cutting tone crushes the maid's spirit, and she slumps with nothing left to show. He lets out a heavy sigh and admits he just needs a little rest, nothing more, just a break. But she instantly offers her lap as a pillow, leaving Arthur absolutely stunned. She swears a lap pillow is pure comfort, but he looks unconvinced at every second. He keeps grumbling that he can't see a thing, even while she points out how breathtaking the sky is above them. He tosses the lap pillow aside and asks her to skip the cuddles and make him some tea instead. As he strides off, he throws out a casual request for a ridiculous amount of milk. Then the maid snaps suddenly and blasts out this bizarre, wildly loud idea for how to pull off that request. Her overwhelming intensity crushes them both into the grass, totally drained. She tries to explain that wild outburst, but Arthur just stands there totally lost. He finally storms off to his room and announces his retreat, leaving her totally baffled and stranded. She only manages to scream his name as he vanishes into thin air. She watches him disappear, and it hits her. he's still drowning in the same depression as before. With a fierce, unshakable stare, she decides the time has finally come to unleash her last resort. So she sneaks into his room, decked out in that special head-made outfit. But once she steps inside, Arthur is already crashed out in bed, fast asleep as if he'd planned it. She can't help but wonder, will this bold outfit really lift his spirits, or is it all just wishful thinking? Realizing she's been a complete idiot, she whispers a sincere apology for barging in. But you can tell he's falling apart, so she blurts out his name, worried out of her mind. A sharp groan spills out of his mouth as he jerks awake from the nightmare. He drags his eyes open and instantly realizes the maid is kneeling right beside his bed. She leans in, soft as a whisper, and asks if a nightmare got him. Arthur tears his gaze away and mumbles a soft, helpless apology. She admits she froze, clueless about what to do after she saw him so upset earlier. So she grabs his hand and tells him how thrilled Marion and the other maids were with everything he did. He leans in and asks her name, and she answers, Marion, then lets him know she's the head maid he helped. He admits that in his old life he never even bothered to learn her name. He never once saw her as a real person. He explains that all those tiny moments of ignorance stacked up until they cracked open the nightmare future. In a future he still can't fully wrap his mind around. She yells his name at the top of her lungs, clawing him back from the black hole of his dark thoughts. She straight up admits that, as a commoner, there's no way she could ever truly understand what a prince goes through. But she looks him in the eye and promises if he's ever hurting, she'll be there, no matter what. She tells him, if you've got nobody else to talk to, come talk to me always. Her honest, heartfelt offer hits him like a thunderclap, and he can't even move or speak. He glances away and, in a low voice, presses her to swear she really understands every word she's saying. She smiles as she admits, with a hard truth, that his burden is something you simply can't fully grasp. But if he can't crack it on his own, she jumps in and thinks it through with him. Her steady, unwavering support hits him so hard he's left completely speechless. And for the first time since he came back, a real, unstoppable laugh bursts out of his mouth. He ribs her for being a flaky maid, and she grins like, yep, I'm totally a rookie. He sinks into the sheets, and at last, calm floods through him like a wave. She tells him, just learn from here on out, can you do that or not? With a fresh spark of resolve, he swears this time he'll get it right. Her soft, gentle smile sparks the exact encouragement he's been waiting for. She breaks into tears of relief, overflowing with joy because she finally managed to put a smile on his face. He leans in and teases her, grinning as he points out that she's finally smiling too. She admits being a mother figure feels impossible, but then she lights up with a daring thought. Maybe she could be an older sister instead. The very next day, Arthur calls out to her and confirms, Marion Wright. She freezes mid-step, totally stunned that he actually remembers her name. He tells you this time he's going to study every last one of them the right way. No skipping, no shortcuts. He even jokes that she's the cornerstone of his plan to rack up good deeds. One small gesture from him, and the other maids explode into pure, breathless delight. They crowd in on him at once, bombarding him with eager pleas to remember their names too. But that sudden wave of attention crashes over him, and he can't take it anymore. He bolts to the garden, completely swamped by the sheer wave of attention he just unlocked. He crouches behind a bush, absolutely panicking because all that attention is staring him down. He swears he wasn't scared for 1 second as he backs away in a total sprint. Right then, a breathtaking woman stepped out holding a bouquet of roses, and she loudly praised him for every ounce of effort. With a soft smile, she watches the truth land. He never really understood the people he worked with. Marion finally admits the brutal truth. She never truly knew him either. Arthur just blurts out that from now on, they can finally learn everything about each other. His plain, no-nonsense declaration hits Marion like a shockwave, and she can't even find the words. He flashes her a tiny, almost nervous smile. He whips around, admits he's late with this, and asks her name. With this new clarity, he finally steps up and boldly asks her to be his personal maid. With a glowing smile, she grabs the role, and that's when we finally find out her name, Kay. And just like that, a brand new chapter kicks off in her life. She's now Prince Arthur's personal maid. But the weight of this new reality crashed down on her all at once. Arthur grins and tells them, every single good deed I do gets locked into my special diary. And Kay swears they'll tackle this wild, brand new mission side by side. He can't help but smile, overwhelmed by how good it feels when they call him by his name like they genuinely mean it. Even those weird little diary creatures look like they're giving this new path their full thumbs up. Later, Kay rushes in and finds him sprawled on the floor, hemmed in by a whole trail of paper airplanes. With a grin, he basically admits he just wanted a reason to shout her name again. A paper airplane plops right at her feet, like a tiny, shocking message that she's suddenly tangled in something weird and brand new. But then another thought hits. Serious-looking woman drops the bomb about his fiancée. And yeah, Kay is absolutely bursting with joy over Arthur's newfound kindness. Arthur flashes a confident grin and says, "Honestly, this is only natural." She can't believe it, he's actually munching onions now, the exact food he used to absolutely hate. He grins as he devours his meal, then practically bursts to his feet, ready to step out and start helping people. The two of them dig into a cozy breakfast, basking together in the warm, sunlit glow of the room. Kay practically bursts with excitement, saying his urge to help is the textbook example of noblesse oblige. The moment he hears it, Arthur chokes on his food, totally frozen in shock. She keeps lavishing him with praise for his brilliant thinking, totally clueless as panic spikes in him. Hearing that word slams him right back to the one person he'd rather bury forever. Right then, a paper airplane rockets past Kay's head, and it totally scrambles her confusion. It punches Arthur straight in the face and drops him into a full-on spin, stunned beyond words. He snatches the folded paper and demands answers on the spot. What is it, and why is it here? Kay snaps that it's totally disrespectful, because it's literally written down. When they open it up, they're hit with a long, vicious list of insults. Arthur swivels in full panic, scanning the room, wondering who could possibly pull off something like this. Then a stern figure slips away. That woman's voice keeps echoing in his head, hammering the lesson of noblesse oblige into his skull. He erupts in frustration, begging that person to get out of his head, because he can't take it anymore. And then boom, we finally get a clear look at her face. Morgan Le Fay, the noble lady. Kay beams at her with a bright, cheerful smile, totally clueless as terror twists across Arthur's face. Morgan leans in close, pressing him with a bold, unmistakable invitation to tea time. He desperately screams for Kay, trying to break free as she fights in his grasp. He snatches his maid and bolts out the door, leaving Morgan stuck there, watching them disappear. She just watches him sprint away, lost in thought, like her heart is asking a question she won't say out loud. Kay thinks they'd look great as a couple, and Morgan shuts that idea down instantly. That encounter slams Arthur straight back to the very day he first met her. He still remembers her laughing at his notorious "let them eat cake" suggestion. She marched up to the young prince with a stack of papers, and terror hit him like a storm. She insisted those weren't mysterious sounds at all. Those were the voices of the common folk. Then horror hit as he realized every single one of them was a letter of complaint and suffering. Morgan just shoots him a blank stare, utterly unfazed by his panic. She warned him that if things kept going like this, revolution would be unavoidable. And she snapped that he fixed the problem right now. Young Prince Arthur couldn't help it. Pure terror shook him to his core. He totally snapped, screaming that it was too much to handle. Morgan watched his outburst like it was disgusting trash, pure disdain. She let out a deep, defeated sigh, utterly fed up with the way he was acting. Even back then, just seeing her made fear slam into him so hard he couldn't breathe. She'd branded him an ignorant fool, like a prince who truly understood nothing at all. And right there in the present, Kay finally snaps, realizing he's been talking about Lady Morgan. Kay pushes, asking if he's truly that scared of her, but Arthur can only shriek in pure terror. Morgan Coldy finally drops the bombshell. She's not just someone he knows, she's his fiancée. The news hits and Arthur rockets into the air, panicking like crazy. Kay reaches out with some tea, but Morgan shuts her down on the spot. No way, stop right now. From behind a pillar, Arthur snaps to the truth. Morgan already knows Kay's name. The noble lady whips her gaze away, her face as cold and unbending as ever. She remembers the kingdom's collapse, commoners wasting away, desperate enough to starve for even a single bean. And she can't forget his infamous idea, like seriously, they should just eat cake. She reminds him of that stupid prince who pressed a blade to his own throat just to prove a point. But then she makes it crystal clear, she didn't come here to see him at all. She tells him straight up that unlike him, she's got goals that can't wait and a life full of must-do missions. With one last chilling warning that the revolution is about to erupt, she snaps her gaze forward, turns on her heels, and walks off like she means it. Kay can only stand there watching her vanish, frozen in stunned silence after that wild encounter. Arthur bursts into an instant tantrum, screaming that he's giving it everything he's got even though her harsh words keep cutting him down. Kay jumps from his sudden outburst, staring at the crumpled paper clenched in his hand. She leans in, studies the odd writing, and can't help but wonder what on earth it's saying. Meanwhile, Morgan bursts into an office, and there, waiting for her like old ghosts, is a familiar figure. It's Goyoku, yes, the prince's once trusted former tutor, now fallen and disgraced. He immediately starts griping about how badly the prince has gotten spoiled on his watch. Morgan coldly slashes him down on the spot, roasting his flashy outfit and the massive private fortune he's built. She snaps that she's about to fire him, and then burn through the rot to purify the entire royal family. But Goyoku finally drops the truth. He's the one who gathered every last complaint from the people himself. A memory flashes her standing among starving kids, watching their suffering up close with her own eyes. He scoffs at her hard work and snaps at the young lady not to get too far ahead of herself. She slumps, utterly crushed because she finally sees it. He can just wipe out everything she fought so hard to build. He needles her, bragging that the royal family can shut down the people's voices with a snap. So he finally demands, if you hate the prince that badly, why won't you just call off the engagement? But she fires back, screaming that she's different, claiming she carries the real spirit of noblesse oblige in her very bones. He snatches her up and snarls that Prince Arthur does nothing at all for his people. Back then, it was a total contrast to today. Kei cheerfully yanks Arthur along and screams that exact same line. Goyoku jolts his head up from the floor, eyes wide, and blurts out Arthur's name in pure shock. Right then, Kei burst in front of Arthur, shielding him, and demanded to know why they were interrupting. Arthur grabs hold of his courage, tells himself not to get his hopes up, because he knows he can't sit around, he has to move. Morgan looks fired up too. She's convinced she's the only one who can fix all of this. Goyoku snaps his finger straight at Morgan and blasts her as someone trying to get him fired. He insists she's the one fueling those rumors to kick off a full-blown revolution. Morgan can only stare in pure horror as she turns his efforts into cold, treasonous proof. The disgraced tutor slams into pity mode, sobbing that her lies are oppressing him. Morgan drops her gaze, utterly crushed as her name gets called. From the doorway, Arthur stares at everything with an icy, calculating focus. Morgan just grins and shrugs like it's totally normal. She snaps that it's not him getting pushed out, she's the one being driven away. Then she drops a jaw-dropping apology for how she threatened him earlier. But she shuts down the whole idea of a revolution, calling it nothing but a punchline. Arthur steps up and asks, straight-faced, if he's really meant to buy her story. He hurls her own words back at her and snaps that the revolution isn't done, it's still coming. His words landed dead on target, and she gives a quiet nod that says he's right. Goyoku can only freeze in total confusion, begging for answers like, wait, what's happening? Kei steps right in front of the prince and snaps at the tutor to shut up, shielding him like a shield. Arthur panics as he realizes every single complaint from the crowd is splattering across the floor like chaos. He finally gets it, these aren't just complaints, they're his ticket to rack up the good deed points he's begging for. Then it finally hits him. Morgan had been pushing him toward the truth the whole time. A frustrated cry bursts from his mouth as the truth slams into him. Kei rushes in to soothe him, convinced he's only rattled by Morgan's never-ending revolution talk. But Arthur treats those letters like straight-up proof, like a weapon he can swing to fight back. He finally gets it, those papers aren't just paperwork, they're a message meant straight for him from his fiancée. Kei's eyes widen in horror as she reads about disease, starvation, and a heartbreaking plea for education. She grins as she finally realizes those weren't jabs at Arthur at all. But she snaps to a decision. There's no way she's letting him see those horrifying things. She scrambles to cover up the letters, totally ignoring the stubborn determination blazing across his face. He finally gets it, those letters aren't ink at all, they're screaming the pain of his suffering people. And it hits him, Morgan's been carrying this whole battle by herself. That paper airplane wasn't meant to mock him, it was his last, desperate shout, begging him to finally look his way. He lunges for the scattered pages, clinging to them as his final shot at survival. Morgan stared at her in shock, whispering, "So you really trust me now?" With a cocky grin, he steels himself and charges straight into a future that once spelled his execution. With fresh purpose burning in his chest, he shouts Morgan's name. He swears it's the truth, no bless needed, and promises he'll save every single one of them. Kei stands guard while Arthur jabs a finger, not at Goyoku but straight at his fiancée. He finally makes his choice, bracing to shatter the destiny that's been locking them both in place. Arthur decides he can't just hear about the suffering, he has to go face those people and see it with his own eyes. And Morgan shocks him, he actually agrees to go. She tells him that Avalon, her own territory, is a safe haven for anyone who's in trouble. Kay and Arthur throw a celebration for this fresh alliance, and they thank her like she just opened the door to everything. Every single staff member looks like they've been swept into the prince's brand new purpose. And for the very first time, Arthur looks genuinely thrilled to become a prince. And that old, clueless version of him still stalks his mind, like a voice in the dark screaming, "You're a fool." Morgan seems to clock his hesitation, and her face eases with a gentle shift. She tells him flat out that this time he's not getting away. And just like that, with Kay at his side, Arthur dives headfirst into the brutal, never-ending job of answering his people's desperate pleas. Morgan can only hide behind her hands, stunned out of her mind by his sudden change of heart. She keeps her eyes on him from afar, trying to wrap her head around this brand new Prince Arthur. As she drifts away, she can't stop replaying the prince's bizarre behavior in her head. She clings to the memory of Kay's naive faith that she'd actually come to help her. And with Arthur's sudden confidence, it was like he'd already peeked at the future. Soon enough, they burst into Avalon, a loud, bustling castle town buzzing with life. Arthur blurts out that everything here feels alive and buzzing, so different from the letters filled with suffering. But Morgan can't shake this gut feeling that the prince is hiding something, and it feels wrong. She whirls around, concern flickering in her eyes, and asks, "Are you okay?" Her thoughts snap back to just a few hours ago. Kay was happily chatting away as the long carriage ride rolled on. Arthur sat there, quietly reading his way through the silence, trying to gear up for whatever was about to hit next. But just as their journey surged forward, a man with a crossbow slammed in, face contorted with pure desperation. He roared at Arthur, slamming him for acting like a prince, just healing the rich and leaving everyone else to suffer. A crossbow bolt flashed in Arthur's eye just as his companions blared the alarm. Arthur simply rose to his feet, face calm, eyes locked in like he'd already decided. A wild burst of light explodes from his hand like a lightning strike. The other commoners lunged in at once, yanking the attacker down and tearing into him for his reckless move. Arthur can only stare as they haul the man off, frozen in place, just a silent witness to their terror. Morgan lets out a loud, exasperated sigh, grumbling that he's already kicked up a scene. He glances at his notes and in total calm tells them, "We'll be there by evening." Morgan couldn't help but point out how icy calm he stayed while the attack raged. He tells them his healing kicks in the second it starts. He can feel the hit, but the pain never lands. It still hit him like a sudden shock, like some invisible alarm was already screaming that an attack was coming. Morgan declares she's heading for Avalon, and Arthur scrambles to cover it up, claiming it's just his good reflexes. But she stops him cold, orders him to look around the town with his own eyes and figure out how the common folk really live. She strides off into the streets, and he just stands there trembling in his wake. Arthur yanks Kay toward him in pure panic, his heart racing as he prays that Morgan is finally starting to look at him differently. Just imagining the two of them getting along lights up Kay's cheeks with a hopeful, blush-worthy grin. So Morgan, reluctant as ever, stitches himself into the plan, and they set out to tour the castle town. A young girl strides up, offering to be his big sister, and swearing she'll protect him from every scary person out there. They're basking in the town's small, beautiful pleasures. Kids are laughing and playing right nearby. The girl holds up a super popular toy and shows him the classic cup and ball game. She breaks down how the game works and leans in, asking, "So, you wanna try it?" With a grin on his face, Arthur eagerly steps up to the challenge and pushes to connect with them. But on his very first try, the ball rips straight into his face and leaves him stunned. He admits it's way harder than he ever expected, and the girl's jaw drops in shock. The hit slams him off balance and down to the ground, and Kay immediately rushes to his side. But the moment he stands up, it hits him. He was never truly into these simple things in the first place. Now he doesn't see them as a faceless crowd. He locks onto each person, every one of them living their own life. He finally clocks it, just how wildly different he is from that cheerful, outgoing maid. He spins back to the kids, and a whole new truth crashes into his mind. For the first time, he doesn't just notice them. He sees each one as a real person, with their own whole life unfolding. Then boom, this sudden sweet aroma slams into his senses, yanking him straight out of his thoughts. The scent whips them straight to a nearby stall, where fresh-baked cookies are flying off the trays. He grabs one, and a tiny blush spreads across his face as he tastes the simple treat. Kay grins as she chatters with the vendor, and the guy confidently assumes the two of them are siblings. Then she lights up and practically begs everyone to let her buy cookies for the whole crew. All this time, Morgan stayed planted by the gate, her face still icy and unreadable. Arthur and Kay finally came back from their inspection, arms stuffed to the brim with treats. Kay feels the tension pressing down on her, and she asks Morgan straight up what's been weighing on her. Morgan snaps his gaze to Arthur and demands, "Are you really here to save the people, or are you just talking?" She leans in and declares, "This is Avalon and it's my territory," where the screams of the broken are finally gathered and heard. She demands Arthur prove his resolve, show her he's truly ready for this. He scans every single letter, each one blazing with the people's rage and grief. Morgan leans in and asks, "Can you actually handle all of it? Have you got the strength to take it?" Arthur boldly declares, "I'm using my healing power to fix everything we're facing." With a sudden rush of confidence, he declares, "Of course I can do it." But Kay is convinced there's a far better way to use his precious magic than just messing around. She insists that if he leaned on his royal prince authority, everything would work way faster and way better. A title card bursts onto the screen, snapping everyone back to his full name and station, Arthur Pendragon. Morgan hangs on every word, her face full of sharp, careful thoughts. Then Arthur suddenly ignites with hope. This is it, his shot to punch straight into the kingdom's problems head-on. He kicks things off by calling out the brutal, eye-widening gap between the commoners and the nobility. Then he points the finger at the real problem, food shortages, and lands on one brutal detail. The wheat is gone. And then boom, he drops the bomb about healing magic, a power everyone wants but only the ruthless hoarders keep locked up for themselves. He straight up says this is the exact reason he came to Avalon, to finally crush every single one of these problems. Morgan looks genuinely stunned, then straight up admits he's actually thought everything through. Kate can't help but stare in disbelief at how wildly Prince Arthur has grown. But then he bursts into laughter and boom, everyone realizes he's been cheating the entire time, using his good deeds notebook to pull the wool over their eyes. Morgan lets out a heavy sigh and throws her trust onto him, for now at least. Arthur doesn't care at all, he's just grinning, finally getting treated seriously for the first time. And that's when Morgan steps up and agrees to bring them to their very first official case. But Arthur already has his sights set on where today's good deed is headed. With a grin, he gestures toward the nearby orphanage, and Morgan's patience instantly snaps. He's convinced this is the perfect day to sweep his fiancée off her feet and rack up some serious brownie points. He snaps into a dramatic pose with a bucket on his head and declares, loud and fearless, that he's taking fate into his own hands. But his big, grand speech gets cut off instantly when a crumpled paper ball slams into his head and bounces away. Arthur can only freeze in total confusion, the bucket still slammed tight on his head. Then bam, a second wave of kids rockets forward and Kay gets blindsided completely. They barreled past her like a little army on a mission, all fired up and dead set on their goal. In the blink of an eye, the bucket-headed prince gets totally mobbed and buried by a swarm. The scene snaps back just minutes earlier, right when they first pulled up to the orphanage. Kay had been spiraling over what might happen that morning, but Arthur just brushed it off and told her not to worry. They were met by an old man, the orphanage's head, who is already bawling from pure joy. One of the kids blurts out that Morgan warned them to brace for a visit, like weeks ago. From behind a wall, Morgan peeks out, desperate to stay as far away from all of this as possible. The old man gets hit like a tidal wave. His tears pour down as he finally lays eyes on the real Prince Arthur. Morgan can only stare, mouth hanging open, as the world drops him in a place like this. The old man leans in and confirms it. Prince Arthur is more than welcome here. And just like that, the reborn prince steps onto the stage, ready to tear up his old fate and write a brand new ending. He can't believe that one simple visit could spark this much joy in all of them. With a grateful heart pounding in his chest, he swears right here is where he'll flip his fate for good. He looks the kids in the eye and says, "Today, you can do anything you want to me." With the bucket clamped tight on his head, he just stands there, waiting for their answer to hit. But then they snap into action and go full assault mode, pelting him with anything and everything they can grab. Kay shrieks his name in pure terror, while the prince gets completely swallowed up by the kids. From far away, the orphanage looks so calm it's eerie, because inside, pure chaos is breaking loose. The first hit slams him right on the head, and you can practically hear the apology flying out mid-swing. The old man shrugs that the kids are just a little too rowdy, while Morgan can't shake the question, does his healing really erase every last bit of pain? But then a chilling darkness swells over everything, dragging a shadow across their innocent game. Kate blurts out his name, panic in her voice, while Arthur keeps begging for forgiveness, sprawled on the floor. One of the kids steps up, puts a gentle but firm stop to them, and scolds the rest for hurting their brand new friend. Arthur assures them he's okay, but warns them to be more careful. Then the kids instantly rush in with apologies. The old man is straight up weeping, swearing that Prince Arthur is basically a saint. From the sidelines, Morgan sneers that he's just spitting out what they want to hear, while Kay looks utterly drained. He pushes them to hit the books and grow into good people, and Morgan feels those words land right in his chest. She swears she said those exact words herself, and she can't shake the feeling. Why is he all of a sudden acting so noble? But Morgan's eyes snap up. There's a boy sitting high on the rafters, perched like he's waiting for something to happen. The old man barks at the boy, demanding he drop down right now. One of the kids mutters that this blessed prince could never possibly grasp what they're fighting through. And they add this: for some people, doing your best doesn't just fail, it drags you straight toward an early grave. Those grim words hit Arthur like a punch as he strides toward the quiet child. He asks straight up whether it was them who talked about dying, even after everything they did to stop it. The kid jerks back hard and blurts out a quick, panicked denial, like they didn't just say it. But the kid on the beam screams it was him, and Arthur stays ice calm as he asks straight up if he's in pain. Then he offers up his magic, promising to heal every single thing that's hurting the boy. But the second death was brought up, a terrifying memory snapped back, like the guillotine's blade slicing through the air. The other kids huddle up in whispers, convinced healing might be impossible for them. Morgan can only slump against the wall, her eyes screaming exhaustion. The boy thrusts forward his name, Beatty, and leans in, asking straight up if Arthur is really serious about helping. He tells her a monster ambushed him, and deadly poison surged through his body. Another kid sneers that weak healing magic is nothing but a fairy tale, while they're forced to wait and die. They swear it's all just their fate, then admit they'd rather stuff their faces with real good food than choke on false hope. Later, Arthur spots the kid up in the rafters studying, and straight out of the blue, the kid asks if Kay's managing the new funds. Arthur flips through his notes and demands to know why that kid is pushing himself so relentlessly. The boy's cheeks burn as he scrambles to deny it, like he can't let anyone see he's studying for a specific reason. He suddenly screams at Arthur to stay away, terrified that if Arthur touches him, he'll somehow really get healed. Arthur shoots his gaze upward, stunned that the boy just exploded out of nowhere. A soft smile breaks across his face, like he finally gets it. He closes in on the kid, and fresh determination burns in his eyes. Kay and the others burst out his name in stunned disbelief. Even Morgan holds his breath, glued to the action, wondering what he'll do next. Arthur leans in and tells the boy, "I know exactly how it feels to claw at fate with everything you've got." He leans in close, urging the kid to keep pushing and giving it his all, just like he does. The prince's words slam into him so hard the boy can't even get a single sound out. The old man drops to his knees, sobbing like his heart just got struck, crying out that it's a miracle. And the other kids finally get it. This is what a real miracle can do. Kay and Arthur keep their eyes on him from afar as the boy finally sinks into peace. All the other kids stare in shock, whispering, Arthur really used his healing magic on Beatty. But Arthur tells them straight up he never used his power at all, just those words he'd learned from his notebook. Betty softly admits she knows exactly how brutally agonizing that kind of pain feels. And that's why he couldn't just walk away from someone fighting tooth and nail to keep living. Arthur finally tears his gaze away like, yeah, admit it, he's been nothing but talk so far. Morgan leans in and says, I've only ever healed anyone when other nobles asked for it. And this is the first time he's ever chosen to do it of his own free will. Her words hit a nerve and Arthur looked up, lost in deep thought. He quietly nods along and a whole new realization hits him so hard it lights up his face. Morgan can't stop thinking, was this exactly what it felt like when he healed Kay? A rare tender smile blooms across her face. Arthur blurts out, what do you mean by that? She says plain and simple that from now on she'll have to learn the hard way, and he nods like, yep, I'm in. Then he grins at the kids and tells them, playfully but firmly, to keep his healing secret, especially from her. That night, Arthur roams the grounds again and again, desperate for sleep but finding none. He flips open his diary and freezes. Fresh ink spells out that the orphanage is fighting back against his execution. The memory of Betty's pain still haunts him like it just happened. From the dark shadows, Morgan can't stop wondering, did he really just change the destiny he was doomed to follow? He knows a prince can't afford to be caught dead asleep on the side of the road. All he can think about is her name as she stands there, alone, washed in moonlight. Her face gives nothing away, swallowed by a calm, thoughtful silence. Arthur shrugs it off and swears he's totally used to sleeping outdoors. But he can't mask the flustered mess on his face when she leans down and stares at him. She finally drops her playful act and speaks in a dead serious tone. Morgan tells him she needs to ask him something straight to his face, something she can't even bring herself to ask Kay. And he leans in, asking her if she really believes he can rewrite his own fate. He panics on the spot and yells that he has no idea what any of this means. But as soon as he finally admits it, he truly has no idea. His expression eases. With a soft smile, she tells him the truth. He's already changed because she's been watching him this whole time. The next morning, Arthur jerks awake with a scream that tears straight out of his soul. His diary just got a chilling new entry. Now it looks like Mordred's faction has eyes on him. He flies into a full-blown tantrum, screaming that no matter what's happened, nothing has truly changed. Days crawl by under a never-ending, gloomy rain, like the sky's determined to crush every hope. Kay throws herself at the door to his chambers, pleading with him like her life depends on it, begging him to come out. For 3 straight days, the prince has shut himself in, cut off from the entire world. He stays buried under his covers, clinging to denial and refusing to look the truth in the face. Crushed by despair, he declares, "I'm done. I never want to set foot outside again." Because if this keeps going, he knows the guillotine's already lined up for him. The diary's words keep hammering through his head, warning him about a threat he can't even name. That creepy, button-eyed thing from his diary drifts through the air like a warning, hanging there with pure menace. But Arthur lunges into the darkness and yanks it free, panic blazing in his eyes. He crumples to the floor, shrieking that his execution is totally, relentlessly unavoidable. On the other side of that door, Kay yells your name, pure concern slamming through the wood. She finally steps in, ready to hear every single thing that's been weighing on his heart. But right away, she freezes for a beat, unsure if she's crossing a line she doesn't have the right to touch. Arthur snapped his eyes up from his diary, stunned by her sudden burst in. The tiny creature pops up and basically nudges him to get outside and shake the thoughts out of his head. The door slams shut in her face, and she can't help but wonder why he's fighting that idea so hard. Because Arthur knows this isn't a game. If he bumps into Mordred, they'll put him to death sooner than ever. He realizes with a jolt in his chest that in this timeline his execution is only 5 years from now. A fresh plan snaps into place. He'll claw his way out of the fate waiting for him, Mordred's blade included. Kay stands in the doorway, worry etched all over her face. He blurts out loud, ordering her to summon Mordred to his chambers right now. A calm, confident laugh rips through the room like it's got the whole place under its spell. He finally clocks the blind spot. Now he's charging straight at Mordred face to face. After pouring everything he had into it, he finally decides this is the quickest way to crush the problem. Kay takes the lead and shouts for the mysterious Mordred, as if she's chasing the answer straight through the dark. Just as they're ready to bolt, a gentle knock taps the door and stops everything cold. Right there stands the same person who murdered him in his past life. Mordred Pendragon, the third prince, slides up to his older brother and greets him with a smile so charming it practically disarms him. Arthur can only gawk in shock as this normally reclusive boy walks in with total confidence, totally clashing with the person Arthur expects. Mordred cracks a joke about him looking like a prisoner, and it sends a cold shiver straight down Arthur's spine. Because he can feel it 5 years from now, that kid will spark the revolution and take the throne. Mordred's smile snapped into something deadly serious, like a silent warning screaming that Arthur can't afford to drop his guard for a second. But his face snaps right back into an innocent smile. Arthur knows that one, for sure, is destined to spark the revolution of the future. Kay, the ever-helpful maid, perks up and suddenly hits on a brilliant idea. She smiles sweetly and offers the young prince a fresh cup of tea. But Mordred waves off all the formal talk and snaps that they can't just stand around in the hall. Then he turns to Kay and orders her to get out. He's determined to have it out with his brother, just the two of them. Kay gives a quiet nod, agrees, and slips away to leave the two brothers alone. But Mordred slams the brakes, glaring at her, and demands to know why Arthur is suddenly calling that maid by name. Arthur explains he's done messing around. He's trying to turn it into a real habit starting right now. To Mordred's surprise, his face suddenly lights up, and he blurts out that he thinks it's a wonderful idea. He's praising his brother like, finally, he's paying attention to the class inequality problem. He even brings up Arthur's backing for the orphanage, praising his big brother as nothing short of amazing for making that effort happen. Arthur stands there utterly disarmed, thinking that with a brother this adorable, he might just dodge his execution. Mordred keeps going and straight up confesses that he'd been totally convinced it was something completely different. His face suddenly hardens when he finally admits the truth. He believed Arthur was nothing but a noble name he could exploit for his own agenda. He insists Arthur's grip on healing is untouchable, and that the orphans will never land real work, not even once. Arthur roared back in pure rage, screaming at his brother's cynical words. Mordred shrugs it off, says the orphans are doing everything they can, but it still isn't cutting it. With a chilling stare, he presses Arthur. Can he really feel at ease with that? With a chilling grin, he swears he'll remake everything, just to keep his brother safe. That sinister offer hits Arthur like a trap, and he's sweating like crazy, totally frozen in fear. Later, Kay shouts for Arthur, again, while he locks himself up like he's hiding from the world. He blurts out loud from his bed, totally panicked and clueless about what to do next. From the other side of the door, she calls out that he's going to get sick, then offers to help him. She insists she doesn't want to blindly follow orders, she wants to understand why he changed in the first place. But Arthur can only stand there, locked in awe of his own power, the same force that secretly ties him to the nobility. He's convinced that spilling his fears to Kay would change absolutely nothing. So she grabs him herself and yanks him out, dragging him step by step from the self-made prison he refuses to leave. She tells him what he really needs is a little sunbathing, no matter how gloomy the sky looks. He pushes back on her methods, but she's dead set on dragging him outside. No excuses, no exceptions. She even shows up armed with a special parasol, an import made to shove the rain right out of the way. But all Arthur can think about is his precious diary, and he grips it so tightly it's practically glued to his hands. Panic explodes on his face. He screams at her to stay away as she closes in. They huddle under the umbrella together, and a tense, worried silence stretches tight between them. Kay finally snaps, "What about the notebook?" and points it out because that serious face he always wears when he reads it doesn't lie. But he shuts her down cold, saying it's none of her business, while he hides the terrifying truths he's keeping locked inside. She shoots him a look and asks, "Am I nothing but a scary, useless maid to you?" But her eyes sharpen, and fierce determination slams into her expression. Arthur's jaw drops in shock, and he blurts out, "What's with that look?" He's basically telling her, if I'm giving it my all, then start cheering me on and praise me for it. He's already stepped outside, so what in the world could she still want from him? With a blur of speed, Kay snatches the precious diary straight out of his hands. He's in full panic mode, screaming at her to hand it back right now. She yanks it back, fires off accusations that he's being disrespectful, and can't stop wondering why rage is burning in his veins. The fight snaps shut when the book slams her right across the face as he shouts her name. She clutches the diary tight, swearing it'll stop him from shutting himself away again. She snaps, saying she's furious because he keeps trying to fix everything all by himself. He swears it's his mess to fix, but she refuses to let that be the final answer. Arthur drops to his knees, gripping the moment as he demands she explain exactly what she means. Tears spill down her face as she blurts, "So what are you trying to tell me?" He snaps his gaze aside and admits flat out that he's uneducated. And he's got nothing useful to say, not a single real piece of advice. He knows he's the kind of man she can't count on. Through choking tears, she scrambles to grab the perfect words. She pleads with him to quit staring only at the things that terrify him. Arthur just freezes, staring at her in total disbelief as her plea hits him like a wave he can't ride. She turns her head, admitting it feels weird, like she shouldn't even be trying in the first place. Come on, he's a prince. He's throwing himself into battles she can't even begin to picture. She shrugs off her own words and snaps that it's just an exaggeration. But in her eyes, he's a noble hero, standing up to every struggle, and backing him is the only thing that feels truly right. She can't stand the thought of him suffering, or even feeling sad for a single second. Arthur can only lock eyes with her, stunned stiff by the sheer honesty in her voice. He finally tells Kay straight to her face, her wish is flat out impossible. With a shaky little laugh, she nods and admits she knows it'll never be possible. Still, she meets his eyes and admits it. She's going to keep wishing for it anyway. She grips the diary tight and fires the question, was he shocked by her outburst? She says his outburst totally shocked her, and that shock is exactly what sparked her rage. But Arthur still can't wrap his head around it. He demands to know why she'd snap into anger or burst into tears over his mess. He admits, "I just don't get it," and begs her to teach him. Tears blur her vision, but she still smiles. She's finally relieved he's asking for help. She leans in and tells him straight up, she, Morgan, and every other maid want to be his power, the muscle behind him, the strength he never has to carry alone. The array of hope finally shatters through the gloomy sky. In the end, it was him. He stepped in and saved her. Her plain, honest answer hits him like a punch. Suddenly, he can't say a word. With a tiny grin spreading across his face, he finally clicks into place. Everything starts to make sense. He shoots off a quiet apology for shoving her away, and it hits him. He'd always known how kind she was even back then. As the sun finally shatters through the clouds, Arthur suddenly got struck by a brilliant new idea. He tells Kay to whip up some tea and invites her to sit with him, like this is the first time she'll ever truly be part of his world. He vows to consult with her from here on out, come what may, even when things get brutally hard. He even flat out admits he can't stand seeing her sad, and Kay is left completely rattled. With a fresh spark blazing in her eyes, she swears she'll become a maid he can finally count on. He beams and takes her offer, and just like that, the two of them finally click and see eye to eye. Kay has even whipped up some brand new sweets, and they're ready to step into whatever the future brings together. She lifts the sweets on a plate sent by the head maid, her heart racing as she wonders what he must be thinking of her right now. But Arthur yanks her in close and demands they take a bite, right here, right now. He says the fresh air has worked up an appetite in him, and they both grin and take a bite together, happy as can be. A rare, calm breath of peace, stolen between the prince and his devoted maid. But the moment they taste it, a brutal blast of spice hits, so savage their eyes flood with tears. Arthur crumples to the ground in sheer agony, screaming, "What kind of cursed tart is this?" Kay tells Arthur it's a recreation of that legendary saintess's favorite flavor, and the moment the woman's taste gets questioned, Arthur can't help but wonder what she's really thinking. She can't help but wonder if his healing power is somehow tied to that spice, even though she knows it straight up makes no sense. They're both sprawled there, utterly defeated, while another maid just stares, confused and frozen in shock. And Arthur suddenly realizes, dread crashing in, that no healing can ever scrub away that awful taste. But right through the pain, Arthur snaps into a brilliant realization. He screams Kay's name like it's the only lifeline. He's convinced he cracked the ultimate fix for all his problems, and Kay looks completely baffled. She asks if this is it, if he's finally ready to step back outside again. He declares this isn't just going outside, this is a full-on trip to a foreign country. Kay fires off a reminder he was meant to check with her first. But Arthur is already bolting away, shouting his plan to go meet the saintess. Kay can barely get his name out, totally stunned that he actually went and made that impulsive choice. Later, she spills the real reason they were yanked onto this sudden journey. Neighboring powers are watching their kingdom's instability with real alarm and deep worry. So they've got to win over the holy city fast before time runs out. Arthur leans out and stares across the massive land, declaring, "We're finally here," as they roll into the holy city of Glastonbury. Kay snaps a reminder in his face, this is Saintess country, and he's got to impress her if he wants to survive the spotlight. She's left speechless at the thought of a whole country, where countless races live side by side. Arthur nods and admits it's way more diverse than home, while Kay beams and serves tea like she's running the whole world. With full confidence, he claims that neither the Saintess nor the elves will ever steal the spotlight from him. Kay proudly claims she's done her research, but Arthur brushes it off like it's just a joke. He's convinced that if he can just prove his power, they'll have no choice but to become his allies. Kay hears the plan and just stares with a stone-cold, unreadable face. But the moment she smiles so bright it lights up her whole face, she steps in and promises to teach him everything. She breaks it down, the holy city isn't just a place, it's an independent zone that plays the middleman, settling disputes between nations. But Arthur can't shake the thought, why does this city clutch so much power? Kay tells him it's all because of the Saintess. This terrifyingly powerful healer is being sent out to help other nations. She gazes over the city, and the whole political game finally clicks in her mind. Arthur praises her as she admits it, saying she's a truly reliable personal maid. Then bam, somebody's hand yanks the tiny diary creature right out of his grip. With a fearless grin, the man announces, "This is why you were summoned." Then he shouts Tristan's name like a command. The woman with him bursts out an apology, confessing she totally lost focus because Arthur and Kay were just too cute together. The man, now revealed as the knight Tristan, admits Arthur is cute, then can't stop himself from wondering what Kay thinks of him. With a wink and a grin, he declares that guarding them isn't a chore, it's absolutely worth every second. A sharp throat clearing cuts through the air, yanking the conversation back onto the rails. The woman tells them that if this meeting goes right today, Prince Arthur's worries will finally melt away. She insists this is their shot to forge a brand new friendship with the holy city. But Arthur can feel it, peaceful on the surface, one wrong move away from total collapse. The whole political situation is crumbling, and public order is slipping out of control fast. He can practically feel the heat of the coming revolution creeping closer, second by second. Tristan just stands there, staring in clear, confused disbelief. But Arthur insists teaming up with the Holy City is a gamble he's ready to swallow. He glances down for a split second, grabbing every last ounce of courage for what's about to hit him. Then he finally spills his real goal, crushing the Saintess in a rivalry that's so one-sided it's basically mercy. Kay goes totally silent when that random, out-of-nowhere declaration of war hits him like a truck. Kay grins and immediately agrees, shouting right back that he'll take down the Saintess. They arrive at a massive estate in no time, the exact place where this life-or-death meeting is about to happen. Kay leans in and asks, "Did you eat properly?" because he's genuinely worried about his condition before the talks even start. But Arthur doesn't hold back. He's already taken a bite of the local specialty, a juicy grilled bird skewer. A sweet little treat. Tristan, their nightly escort, handed it to them like a gift from the shadows. He leans in real close and asks Kay, "So you tried the local delicacy too? Was it insanely spicy for you too?" She just bursts into laughter and jokes. Imagine if everything tasted that poisonous. That would be a real disaster. Their laid-back jokes snag the attention of the other escorts around them. That familiar taste hits him like a lightning bolt, and Arthur suddenly realizes he's met this Saintess before, in his past life. He's back in that icy, dead quiet meeting, staring across a long table while a dark shadow swallows the room and hangs over him. He still remembers that meeting like a dead weight, nothing but a pointless shell. When the revolution finally exploded, the Holy City slammed the brakes and refused to pick a side. The memory of his torture crashes back, someone yanks his hair and he screams in raw agony. A guard jeered at him, laughing, "So what's it like to finally feel true pain for the first time?" He remembers throwing his hands out into the void, begging the Saintess, desperate, frantic, trying to get her to save him. His captors cackled, daring him to shout for a healer, like it might actually save him. But a woman sneered at him, telling him point-blank not to even bother calling for help. Because a prince who had to grovel to a foreign Saintess for help was already a man broken beyond saving. But this time, when Kay shouts his name, he snaps back, refusing to let history repeat itself. An attendant ushers them inside, and just like that, the stage is set for a meeting that's nothing like what they expected. He snatches his resolve back and vows, this time he'll set everything right. A woman fanned herself like a warning flare and declared, "I'm Elaine, the Saintess of the Holy City." Arthur, Kay, and even Tristan get hit with the sudden reveal, and they're left totally speechless. They're left gaping in total confusion, totally blindsided. Kay thinks he's just being shy, but Arthur shuts that down fast. He says it's something else entirely. Then the Saintess leans in and asks, "How's the food I made? Do you like it?" A mysterious glimmering dish gets shoved into his hands, just one single spoonful, and the air feels charged. Arthur pauses, dread flooding his chest as he raises the bite, like something terrible is about to happen. He mutters Elaine as the horrifying truth finally crashes in. And the Saintess gazes down at them, smiling like she knows every secret, sharp, knowing, and almost sinister. It hits him like a punch. Back then, she never wore a mask even once. She urges them, "We're healers too, so stop clashing and learn to get along." Kay panics, shot in quickly, trying to remind him this wasn't some casual chat. It was a delicate diplomatic meeting. Elaine just shrugs and tells him she can't undo the fan he's already offered her. She leans in and says, "This is way too rare to waste. I want to see your face." Kay blurts out a quick apology for his behavior, but Arthur is so flustered he can barely think. He demands answers, what the Saintess is plotting, because he's scrambling to claw back control. But Kay can only stare in terrified silence as his composure finally shatters completely. Elaine then slips out a mask of her own and declares, "I already know your face." And she has zero intention of hearing a single word he says. She boldly claims her healing power is on a whole different level and orders him to show his face. Arthur yells that it's impossible, but Kay barrels into him, trying to stop him from going any farther. He swears his own power is just as strong, and she can't stop laughing at him. The prince totally loses it, thrashing wildly in pure panic. Kay blurts out a desperate apology for his outburst, scrambling to salvage a meeting that's already gone up in flames. Even Tristan and the other attendants rush in, begging the Saintess to spare him and forgive his crime. Elaine watches them drop their heads in apology, and a smug little smirk curls on her face. The attendants keep whispering to each other that Saint Tess has been acting weird as of late. A memory snaps back, someone begging Elaine, warning her she's dealing with royalty. They remember this. Sure, she heals anyone who's in need, but there's always some sneaky catch tied to every single act of mercy. One of the attendants blurts out, "What do you even have to complain about?" The other just shrugs off their request and makes it clear the Saintess won't talk to them at all. But Kay suddenly blurts out, "I get it fully, no doubt. She swears she has to be useful, so she goes straight to the saintess and talks to her face to face. Arthur steps up, boasting that he's far superior and demanding an alliance, but Elaine shuts it down cold with a flat refusal. Then bam, the doors blow wide open with a violent crash. A flustered man bursts into the room, blurting out non-stop apologies for crashing their meal. The whole room whips around, stunned by the chaos, because the meeting is now totally blown off the rails. He blurts out that he tore over here like a fire alarm because this is an emergency. A deadly poisonous monster just burst into the nearby village, and every single resident has been hit with its venom. The saintess whirls around, and you can tell she gets exactly what's going on. She warns that the poison is so brutal it's dropping even the trained knights. With his final breath, the man gasps out a thank you to her right as she starts the work. Her hands erupt in blinding light, screaming how powerful her healing really is. A surge of pure energy crashes over him, blasting the poison out of his body. He sinks into a peaceful sleep at last, because the immediate threat is finally gone. She tells him you're safe now, and then orders him to crash and rest. Arthur instantly strides up and barks an order to have a carriage ready for the afflicted village. But the saintess whips her gaze to him, ice cold, and snaps that it's a shame. Arthur can only stare back in pure confusion, totally blindsided by what she just said. He stares down, and her cold, dismissive words keep crashing back into his head. But the saintess just smiles and says, "Don't worry, I'll save every single one of you myself." She snaps her orders and demands her carriage be dragged out right away. Because this isn't some fancy dinner party with a foreign prince, it's serious business. With eyes blazing, she vows that she'll be the one to save them. Arthur and Kay are already ahead of everyone, sprinting straight for the village by themselves. The same test watches in stunned silence as they tear past her at full speed. And right on schedule, Arthur shows up at the scene way before she even gets there. But then he stumbles on a nightmare. Every single villager is already down, the whole place wiped out. A cold shock hits him. Almost everyone around him has been infected by the monster's poison. He takes in the chaos, and the few villagers still on their feet stare back at him with wary, suspicious eyes. An old man lunges into the scene and screams a warning, shouting at him to stay back, because it's the only way he survives. But Arthur can already taste the poison in the air, same old deadly stench, crawling back like it never left. He tells them, "Don't worry, I'm here, and I'll heal every single one of you." Right then, the saintess bursts onto the scene, and the old man practically exhales her name in pure relief. She wastes no time. She demands to know where the injured are, ready to jump straight into action. But the man leans in and reveals what that mysterious boy, who showed up just moments earlier, really means. It's Prince Arthur himself. He's already racing to heal everyone who's been struck down. He glances over his shoulder with a smug grin, then tells Elaine she's already too late. And he shoots a confident declaration. He's the one who's taking care of every villager here today. With a loud declaration, he reaches out and vows he's the one who will save them all. Elaine lunges ahead, rage blazing as his selfish meddling sparks her fury. But the closer she gets, the more she realizes this poison isn't like anything she's ever seen before. A villager grabs Arthur's shoulder and thanks him, and for one heartbeat the pain finally eases off their chest. But that relief lasts only a heartbeat, then the poison crashes back in and it hits way harder this time. The villager drops again right as the poison crawls back in and hits the exact spot Arthur just healed. Kay bursts in with a bucket of water, screaming Arthur's name like pure panic is driving her. The saintess stretches out her hand, jaw set and eyes burning, and she seizes control of the whole situation. Kay rallies the weak and the saintess, who's fighting like hell as that ruthless toxin tries to take her down. Now they finally get the terrifying truth. This poison rides the air. Elaine tells him, "Sure, your healing keeps you safe, but if you're even in the same room, you'll spread it to everyone else." But Arthur waves off her worry like it's nothing, swearing up and down that he's totally fine. She screams right back that his personal safety means nothing if he can't protect the villagers. With a blinding flash, she explodes with her healing power and sends out a massive wave that floods everything in its path. Her magic surges through the whole hut, an all-or-nothing spell meant to cleanse the air itself. She snaps to Arthur and commands him to heal everyone inside, while she swats the poison back with everything she's got. With sheer determination in his eyes, Arthur clenches his resolve, then barrels into the glowing hut like it's his last chance. The crowd can only gawk at the building, their heads spinning as they wonder what's going down inside. Kay and the old man huddle in prayer, begging for his safety as worry tightens into every line of their faces. But deep down, Arthur gets yanked backward as poison crashes over him, and he can't stop screaming. Later on, the villagers pack outside and pour their gratitude onto Arthur, praising every ounce of his non-stop work. Inside, the old man jolts to the truth. An entire night has vanished and the sun is already up. Kay erupted in cheers, thrilled they pulled it off thanks to the Saintess's help. But Arthur crumples to the ground, admitting their powers might match, but this was never a contest. He felt pure relief, knowing he'd just pulled the villagers out of their suffering. His selfless words hit the Saintess like a wave. She didn't see it coming at all. She drops her gaze for a second and the truth hits, quiet, sudden, and crystal clear. And with a tiny smile, she nods like, yeah, you're totally right. Arthur can only stare up in shock, totally blindsided when she actually gives in. He shouts her name as she whirls to go, and right between the two healers, a brand new chapter kicks off. But Kay suddenly crumples to the ground, blurting the same test again, as if she can't understand why she's forcing herself this hard. She bolts toward Arthur's side, screaming his name in full panic as dread closes in. The old man can only stare in total confusion, while the Saintess tumbles down in front of him. Kay admits her body has hit the wall. She's completely drained and can't move a single muscle. Turns out healing magic hits like a truck. She's getting slammed trying to treat all these people at once, and she's just not used to it. Elaine watches with a tired sigh as Kay steps into the sickbed meant for someone else. The old man is breaking down in tears, stunned that a foreign prince would actually show up and save them. Elaine cuts her words like a blade, saying a crummy little village like this has nothing it can pay them for. And Arthur jumps in, swearing he's mending them up with zero thought of a reward. The old man bursts into joy, shouting both their names at the top of his lungs, while Elaine watches, her face locked in a brand new, unreadable expression. Tristan can only sit there and watch the chaos rip through everything, wearing a tired smile like a badge of survival. He erupts in frustration, cursing the grind of serving a free-spirited master who never holds still. The knight trembles with pure terror, realizing the very person he swore to protect is gone. Arthur and Tristan lock eyes in a calm, breath-held moment, two souls finally getting it, just grateful they're safe. Tristan leans in and quietly tells him he gets exactly how it feels to worry about someone. Arthur can only stare in pure confusion, trapped there as Kay keeps him locked in her arms. A heavy, breath-holding silence sweeps the room as everyone finally comes down from the ordeal. Right then, a man in a beret shows up and quietly tells the test girl, "You've done enough," like he's cutting straight through the noise. He flashes her a reassuring smile, like it's the perfect cure to melt her exhaustion away. Elaine can only stare up at the ceiling, and her face screams that she's out of energy and needs to rest. The beret-wearing man leans in and tells Elaine to get ready. They'll bolt the moment the horses are fit. Kay admits she's never stumbled across a poison this deadly before. Elaine snaps in horror, realizing the poison doesn't need contact at all. It can infect her just by being near. She drops the bombshell. The source is a cockatrice, one of the 5 great beasts. The villagers back up her worst fears and tell her the brutal truth. There's no escape. They've got to try fighting it. Arthur is sick with horror when he realizes that one lone monster can wreck an entire town's economy. Elaine asks if he knows what it is, and as she talks, she describes a creature with a chicken's head. The second Arthur hears chicken, his face lights up. Then Tristan jumps in, ready to track it down for him. The villagers can barely process it. Prince Arthur is really stepping up to help them. He then blurts out, "So, does anyone here know how to fight monsters?" And you can hear his nerves shaking right through the question. Kay is left totally flustered, because that sudden concern hits him out of nowhere. Arthur quickly reassures her, insisting it's nothing, just a chicken. But he pauses for a split second, eyes narrowing with deep thought. He knows her worry isn't random. She's scared to lose him, and it shows. Tristan cuts in out of nowhere, grinning with confidence as he vows, "I'll be there, no matter what, to protect you." The knight is so stunned by their tight bond that his mind goes blank and he can't even find the words. But the Saintess had totally snapped. She'd had enough of their non-stop bickering. She thrusts her hand forward, and a blinding light starts to blaze into existence. And she shoots them a cold look, telling them she doesn't need a single bit of their help. Her gaze flares with unstoppable determination. She's charging straight at the beast all on her own. She vows to fix her country's problems all by herself. And with a breathless snap of determination, she bolts into the woods while her attendant shouts her name after her. The man in the beret can only stand there as she walks away, his face etched with tired, worried concern. Tristan rants that the tale between St. Tess and Arthur always drags him through the worst, most frustrating mess. Arthur can only stare at the ground, swallowing his pride as he offers a quiet apology for every last bit of trouble. But the man in the beret leans in and tells him the truth. This isn't how the old Elaine ever was. His mind yanks him back 4 years to a totally different life. He still remembers young, hopeful Elaine, eyes shining as she chased her dream of becoming a pure saintess. She was fired up by the legend of that holy king, a healer who saved anyone and everyone, no matter their rank. And she clung to one dream, becoming a hero just like him, like some fairy tale legend come to life. But he lays it out plain. Ideals and reality rarely meet in the middle. Since Tess' title was just a banner the church waved to flex its power and claim authority. At the start, she tried with everything in her to live out that fairy tale dream. Tears streamed down her face as Elaine calmly said, "This is my duty," and she instantly earned her gratitude. She was absolutely bursting with joy because her child had finally been pulled from the brink thanks to the Saintess's power. But some people twisted her kindness into a weapon meant to polish the church's image and boost its reputation. That cold, brutal politics of the world hit young Elaine like a punch, and she went completely stunned. The kid she saved could only muster pure, innocent words of encouragement. But Elaine could feel it in her bones. This wasn't right. She just wanted to help people, not get dragged into some hidden agenda. She couldn't even stand side by side with her fellow priests. Every one of them treated her like a disposable tool. When word spread about an epidemic hitting a nearby town, Elaine immediately geared up to sprint in and help. But her companions turned it into a golden chance, whispering that it'd go smoother if more people caught the sickness first. They treated it like a chance to flex their power, then drifted into the lane just to demand, "So what are you even talking about?" The bitter cruelty of her own people hit her so hard she couldn't even move, stunned to the bone. Her bright, idealistic heart got crushed, and her face crumpled into pure despair. Her companions could only stare, shrugging it off like her reaction was no big deal. As she slipped into the darkness, the world swallowed her, and she was totally alone. The man in the beret tells her that ever since that day, Elaine quit waiting on anyone to come through. She finally understood the noble, selfless healer from the legends was real. She'd been dreaming of a fairy tale life, one she could never truly touch in this world. So she chose the life of a jester, turning into a clown who swore she'd never let hope for the world live in her again. The beret-wearing man closes his story and it finally clicks. He understands why she's been cold to him all along. Arthur shoots out a fast apology for what he did earlier, then bolts after her. Kay can only watch, her worry spilling over as she calls out the Saintess's name. And then Arthur finally gets it. This world is terrifying because you can't trust a single soul. Kay shoots for his attention, but he just waves her off like she's nothing, drowning in his own thoughts. With a bright grin, he blurts out that they're leaving to hunt the cockatrice. Then the villagers are left standing there, totally stunned. Arthur whips around, blares out Kay's name, and catches her completely off guard. He leans in close, urging her to look ahead, because he'll come back safe. With a shaky, tearful smile, she stammers that she'll do it. Arthur and Tristan plunge into the woods, and the prince keeps asking, "Where on earth do we even start this search?" The knight just smirks and nods like he's saying, "Yeah, that's a great question." He explains that a cockatrice, like most monsters, doesn't just strike, it leaves behind a trail of prey's remains. Arthur finds the monster mascot idea hilarious, and somehow he totally ignores the danger. But his bright grin gets snatched away the second he trips out of nowhere and launches himself into the air like a disaster catch. He flails through the air, yelling at Tristan to get his act together and save him right now. When he hits the ground, he spots a ripped scrap of cloth, and that sight hits him, reminding him not to toss it aside. But when he leans in for a better look, shock hits his face like a lightning bolt. He spots the fabric and horror hits him fast. He knows it belongs to someone he can't forget. His thoughts snap to that stern elf woman's face, and now her fate hangs in the balance. He explodes into a sprint, ditching the shouts from behind him. A bead of sweat slithers down his face as he drives forward like his life depends on it, yelling the Saintess's name as he rockets straight to her side. And when he arrives, he finds her sprawled on the ground, frozen in terror after a cockatrice attack. He can't even wrap his head around how she could throw herself into something that reckless, alone. Tristan and the guy in the beret sprint in, demanding proof she's only unconscious. Tristan doesn't even see it coming. The sudden movement slams into his world and knocks him for a loop. The knight can only gape in shock as the prince explodes out of nowhere. The wounded elf woman slowly drags her eyes open, and in a trembling whisper, she calls the Saintess's name. And the beret-wearing man blurts out that Elaine stormed off to fight the beast, alone. He tells her straight up that she ordered them back to the village, then left her there to face the beast by herself. The memory hits, her icy refusal cuts in fast, and she snaps that she doesn't need a single bit of their help. Her friends begged her in panicked voices, shouting her name like the world was about to end. Arthur roars that he'll be the one to take down the cockatrice, and he'll grab the whole burden onto his own shoulders. The beret-wearing man grins and remembers the elf woman telling him, "This is exactly why we came." She demanded to take the very same test with him, no matter how deadly it got. Arthur whips around to Elaine and asks, "Have you ever even seen a cockatrice before?" He finally admits the only monsters he's ever seen are stuffed and mounted. Then she storms off, shushing him like, "Quiet," and the silence hits hard. She whips her gaze over her shoulder and snaps at him to shut up. But Arthur just grins, pointing out that if they get too loud, that monster could pop out like it's been waiting. Tristan leaned in and asked if Arthur had suddenly started worrying about the same tests. He points out just how wild it is that the prince would care this deeply about someone else. Arthur finally admits the truth. No matter what, he can't just walk away and leave Elaine to struggle on her own. The moment Tristan's brain sparks with thoughts of romance, Elaine's face twists into unmistakable disgust. But Arthur's still wrestling with the truth, insisting he doesn't really want to help her. Then it hits him hard, like a light bulb snapping on in his brain. With a bright grin, he tells everyone he also read that picture book about the Holy King. His words hit a nerve, and Elaine whips her gaze back with a tense, tight expression. She suddenly snatches him, eyes blazing with a fierce feeling she can't even put into words. Arthur can only stare in stunned surprise, wondering if he somehow said the one thing that spooked her. She scoffs like it's nothing, swearing it can't possibly hurt her. The man in the beret snaps, because he realizes she's the one talking about him. Arthur finally admits the truth. He doesn't buy everything in that story. He tells her she's already thrown in the towel on becoming the Holy King, and she's done trusting anyone else too. But he points out that she's still fighting, she hasn't given up on saving them. And deep down, she still burns to become the legendary hero everyone talks about. Elaine looks like she's finally clocked it, accusing him of sympathizing with her like it's some kind of hobby. Arthur and Tristan are stuck just watching as she reacts in the most bizarre way. She shrugs off his words and shuts the conversation with, "That's it, there's nothing more to say." Tristan cuts in and declares it isn't sympathy at all as he ushers Arthur forward. Tristan snaps to Elaine that, as a proud saintess, she should stop here and head straight home. He snaps that they can't just leave a foreign dignitary out in the woods and walk away. The elf woman can only stand there trembling, a bead of sweat rolling down her brow. Elaine fires back, shouting that she doesn't need their help at all. She shrieks at them to drop their fight over her country's problems and back off, leave her in peace. But her explosive outburst gets snuffed the moment a cockatrice suddenly drops in. Tristan instantly rockets Arthur out of the way as its attack rips through the space. The elf woman grips her weapon tight, and the moment she sees it, she realizes she's finally facing the legendary beast. Arthur can only gawk in disbelief, because it's way bigger than he ever dared to imagine. He panics, shouting out to Tristan, demanding to know what they should do next. Arthur panics and yells that they can't possibly fight in a space that tight. Tristan nods and shouts at everyone, "Back up, get to the open space." Elaine shoots back furious, saying they've got zero time to pull off some strategic retreat. Tristan snaps off her words and points straight to a clearing, where they can finally set the perfect trap on the beast. But their escape crumbles the moment Arthur erupts in a scream, right when they hit a dead end. A cockatoo rockets past them out of nowhere, totally brushing off the whole group. Arthur stands there, totally stunned, as the elf woman suddenly hears the rush of running water. Tristan finally clocks the terrifying truth. The cockatrice isn't just deadly, it's a poisonous bird sprinting straight for the river. He tells them that right at the water's edge, it can poison the whole area and turn everything into a toxic swamp. And there, in the tainted water, the beast fully awakens, turning into a walking warning of plague and pestilence. The elf woman locked onto her target and loosed an arrow that screamed straight and true. But it dissolves in midair, getting swallowed up by the beast's toxic aura. The guy in the beret shoots back that the poison's corrosion is just too brutal. Nothing they try can land a hit. An elf woman snaps that a cockatrice is a total coward, then warns you this fight won't be quick, it'll stretch out into a brutal, drawn-out battle. Then she snaps her gaze to Arthur and tells him, "I've got this, go back to your country." Then wham, somebody's boot crashes through the poisoned water and sends a violent splash flying. Arthur lunges ahead, brushing off every warning that comes his way. The cockatrice can do nothing but stare, utterly baffled by this strange human. Arthur grinned and loudly declared he was stepping right into the beast's so-called safe zone. He charges straight at the monster, grinning with fearless confidence like it's almost reckless. The poison surges in at once, soaking into his body before he can even react. A corrosive toxin so brutal it could drop any normal person instantly. Right when it matters most, his healing magic bursts to life. He tore the poison out of his system in a blinding flash. He's stuck in this brutal loop at mind-blowing speed, and the monster can't even process what he's doing. The cockatrice can only stare in stunned confusion as its greatest weapon turns completely useless. With the poison finally shut down, Arthur snaps his hand forward, and with a grin full of victory, he easily caught the beast that was no longer dangerous. The beret-wearing man can only stare in shock, begging him, "Please keep purifying this place." And Elaine just stands there, shell-shocked, staring at this absolutely unreal turn of events. The cockatrice is fully crushed now, its power draining away like it never existed. But then Elaine gets it: if that poisoned water is still there, the beast keeps sucking strength from it. Tristan can't stop worrying that Arthur's going to burn out way before the monster even runs out of steam. The elf woman strides forward and offers to back him up any way she can. Arthur's words ring in Elaine's head, smashing the doubt and proving she never really stopped trying to save people. Tristan clenches his resolve and is ready to guard the prince no matter what it costs. Arthur whips his head around and asks, "Can we really cleanse the spring's poison?" Elaine takes a breath, locks in her resolve, and then boom, unleashes her own healing magic. The beast screams one last time as Arthur clamps it in his grip, refusing to let go. He shoots her a radiant grin and turns back, thanking the saintess for saving him. Arthur can't help it, he blurts out a confused, baffled sound. In its last seconds, the beast lashes out, and the blast of force hurls him soaring through the air. Tristan stares in total shock as the deadly poison twists back into clean, pure water. Elaine is utterly drained, but the danger is finally wiped out. Arthur barrels back to her side, grinning like the sun, and thanks her for saving him. She shoots her gaze aside, cheeks blazing, and blurts out that she only did it because he was right there to help. But then she lunges forward and jams her staff right into his face, and he freezes, totally blindsided. Her eyes bulge wide, fear and fury mixing in the same breath. Arthur can only stare back, utterly stunned as her mood flips out of nowhere. A chilling vision of the guillotine snaps into view, driving home the fate he's desperate to outrun. Arthur is left utterly speechless when her aggression erupts out of nowhere. The beret-wearing man clenches his worry, fearing the saintess can't possibly carry all of this. She whips her gaze away and fires the question at him: what in the world does he think he knows about her? She blurts out loud at him, screaming, "What's wrong with you? What are you even trying to do?" She tears into him, calling out his pretty talk and pointing out that he leans on his servants for everything. She demands to know how any sheltered prince could possibly understand the pain she's been drowning in. Her attendant can only stare, watching the test spiral into an unusually wild, agitated state. Elaine drops her gaze and mutters under her breath that nobody should poke her again. But Arthur just glances back with total calm, assuring her, "I get it." He shoots out and grabs her hand, and with a brand new conviction roaring in his voice, he swears he truly understands. His words hit her like a shockwave, and her eyes snapped wide with pure disbelief. She suddenly yanks him by the collar, and all her composure instantly shatters. He's jolted hard, and her rage finally erupts. Suddenly, a younger version of her flashes into her mind, hand in hand with a little boy who looks oddly familiar. Arthur begs her to stop, drowned in the sheer shock of her sudden explosion. She demands to know what he thinks he's doing, trying to heal her like he knows what's really going on. He drops his gaze and blurts out, "I'm not just feeling sorry for you, I need you to listen." The memory won't let go, and the boy's voice keeps ringing in her head. Arthur grimaces and looks up, telling her, "You're just like me." And he slams the warning: if she keeps going down this road, she'll end up stranded and totally helpless, because no one's coming to save her. She lets out a savage scream, demanding he stop pretending he understands her experiences. She insists she's got this all under control, and she doesn't need anyone's help. And she makes it crystal clear she doesn't need help from anybody. But the cockatrice suddenly rockets forward, snatching them all off guard in an instant. Elaine shrieks at him to get out of the way, now. But the elf woman rockets him out of danger and takes the hit herself. The hit slams her backward, and she reels like the world just cracked open. Under the beast's looming shadow, she crumples to the ground. Arthur dashes to her side, but she snaps back that she can handle everything and won't take anyone's help. Because deep down, she's terrified she'll get hurt again. Arthur explains that he can wipe out any physical wound, straight up. Walking through life with nobody to lean on doesn't just hurt, it gnaws at your soul from the inside out. Through her shaking tears, Elaine finally blurts out that she knows pain all too well. After the cockatrice finally goes down, Tristan can only collapse into a tired, hard-won sigh. The elf woman snaps at Arthur, saying it's rude to barge in on a private moment like that. And just like that, the fight finally goes silent. The village's terror finally dies down, and the cheers roar through the forest like thunder. The man in the beret and the elf woman lock eyes, and you can feel the relief wash over them like a wave. Kay frets over Tristan's tattered clothes, but he just cracks up and shrugs it off as poison damage. The elf woman flashes a bright smile and swears she's totally fine, so Arthur finally exhales in relief. By fixing the Saintess's mess and smashing the cockatrice, he finally brought their relationship back to normal. And his diary slams the truth in everything shifts overnight, and it hands him a total of 20 points. A fresh report claims that a whole wave of people, led straight by the Saintess herself, are gearing up to crush the order for his execution. Elaine nods and pushes them to stay in touch from here on out. Later, Arthur and Kay track down Elaine's special cockatrice skewer recipe and start sampling every juicy bite together. She asks if this is what he meant by an alliance, and he just grumbles that it's way too spicy. He tells her to drop the formalities and speak freely, and you can feel their brand new friendship click into place. The elf woman looks totally thrown off by the sudden shift in the whole vibe. Then, out of nowhere, every last one of them finally clicks into a happy understanding. As their carriage pulls away, Elaine beams at them and waves them off like she truly means it. Arthur leans out of the carriage and waves hard, thanking Tristan right as they brace to split apart. The knight just smirks, then flat out admits the mission was a success because of him. A messenger rockets off, swearing he'll rush back the moment anything new happens to the Saintess. Back inside Kay's place, he grins because he just snagged yet another ally. According to his diary, he dodged more than the execution. He also slipped past life imprisonment. With fresh confidence blazing in his chest, he declares it like a vow. Sure, death is guaranteed, but his fate, he's going to rewrite it. But just as they finally get a quiet moment, a swarm of curious onlookers crashes in and shatters the peace. Before they can even breathe, a crowd barrels in, cheering him as the hero who wiped out the cockatrice. Kay lunged to block him from the crowd, instantly panicking. Were these people actually reporters? A bespectacled man strides up and introduces himself as Jean, then leans in with non-stop excitement, begging to hear their story. Jean raises a newspaper like a warning sign, grinning as he says this story is already stealing the spotlight everywhere. It slams you with the face of a grim man. Doom weighs so hard on his expression it feels like it might crush him. The reporter flat out declares he's a criminal because the world's about to watch his public execution. And Arthur spots him right away. It's the same desperate man who attacked him on the road to Avalon. Jean lays it out. Execution is locked for next week, sealing a brutally grim fate for the would-be assassin. Another onlooker swears a massive crowd is definitely going to swarm in to witness the spectacle. Arthur stares at his diary, and his mind instantly snaps back to that man who tried to end his life. But instead of rage, a brilliant, totally unexpected idea suddenly snaps into place. He doesn't see this as an execution at all. He sees it as a golden chance to rack up a mountain of good deed points. He whips around to the reporters and makes it official. He forgives his attacker right there on the spot. The reporter just freezes, utterly stunned by the prince's sudden, earth-shattering declaration. With a smug grin, Arthur loudly declares that the public execution is officially off the table. His words slam right into Jean and Kay, leaving them totally speechless and stunned. The crowd instantly erupts in outrage, screaming, "How could he ever forgive a criminal?" But Arthur finally cracks it. These people are real individuals, not the cold, selfish nobility he was taught to fear. He knows that man wasn't really cruel, pure desperation drove him, and he fought like his life depended on it, because it did. And that brutal attack was born straight from the pain the royal family unleashed. His diary shouts a grim warning: if you stop the spectacle of punishment, the people will have nowhere to vent their fury. But Arthur refuses to sit back. He's determined to break that vicious cycle of despair right now. His huge speech just sailed right past the reporter, who can't wait to demand the story go straight on the front page. But the reporter stammers, totally wrecked with confusion at the prince's cheerful declaration. Arthur can't wrap his head around it. He's the one offering forgiveness, so why does it feel like such a fight? From the crowd, a man snaps out that sure, Arthur's the one being targeted. But now this execution is all about the state. He insists this is the only path for the criminal, Louvain, to finally find peace. Arthur murmurs the name under his breath again, eyes sharp with cold calculation. Kay yanks him out of his thoughts with a shout from right behind him. She tells him, "If you're really set on this, I'll throw everything I've got behind you to make it happen." With fire blazing in his eyes, Arthur swears this time he will break free from his own execution for good. And that's when he announces his new mission: stop the execution, while Kay steps in, promising to help him come up with a plan. A hush falls between them as they stare down the brutal task waiting in front of them. Arthur fesses up that he's got zero clue what to do next, then turns to Kay and asks if she's figured out anything. But But his faithful maid suddenly crumples, hit by a brutal fever that takes her down fast. That brutal long journey and the stress piling up at the worst possible time finally crushed her. Arthur steps in softly, urging her to rest, and he reassures her. Her fever is finally gone. Marion, the head maid, leans in and says Kay's probably just wiped out from all that travel. With his main advisor knocked out, Arthur realizes they've got no choice but to hunt down someone else to help. He races down his list of allies, but every name feels wrong for this touchy, high-stakes situation. Then a brilliant idea explodes in his mind, and he immediately knows the one person he has to call. Marion practically bursts with excitement that he solved it so fast. And with purpose blazing in his chest, he calls in his chosen ally, bringing them to a grand estate where he's about to beg, no, demand their help. And his chosen ally turns out to be the very first prince, Rod Pendragon. A stern-faced maid stood right next to him, her expression impossible to read. A sharp memory snapbacks to young Arthur, grinning as he shouts his brother's name with pure joy. But Rod yanked him by the shoulders, shaking him with a shocking amount of force. He'd gone after Arthur hard, claiming he was trying to snatch the throne just because he could heal. Arthur tried to play it cool, but it left his brother completely rattled. The maid leaned in and told Rod to stop panicking. Arthur had way more supporters, and everyone knew the eldest son would get the edge. But Arthur just flashed a smile and said, like it was the simplest truth, his big brother was someone worth being proud of. Back in the present, Arthur takes a sip of his tea, grinning because Rod shows up lightning fast after his call. Rod sips his tea with a smug grin, while his maid buys every bit of his kind older brother act. But his words hit like a punch. He's not soothing Arthur at all. He's blaming the way his supporters have dried up for making him feel depressed. He even cackles about how they tossed Arthur in prison, shaking his head and calling him a fool. His maid shoots him a disgusted look, thinking, if he can't even control his own people, he has no business wearing the crown. Arthur still looks impressed as he admits he's not fit to be king, and that's exactly why they executed him. He beams at Rod, swearing he nailed his true nature perfectly right as his brother's disgust spikes through the roof. But then his face hardens and he warns Rod that if this keeps going, Rod will be the one marched straight to execution, and that crushes Arthur's heart. Then he whips around to Rod's maid and asks if there's anything he can do for his brother. She smiles and hands him some sweets. Arthur blurts out a slightly flustered, "Thank you," as Rod watches the bizarre exchange unfold. A maid with a stone-still face, just maid number 15, watches everything unfold. Arthur grins and tells Rod to start calling his servants by name, but his brother just can't seem to wrap his head around it. The maid can't stop thinking about one brutal truth, that everyone is still human, and about how Goyoku's betrayal once ripped her apart in her past life. It's the brutal lesson that when a subordinate betrays you, death can come for you fast. Arthur shoots a smug, satisfied grin like, case closed, and you can practically feel his point land. That strange exchange throws Rod and his maid completely off balance, like their brains just short-circuited. Rod then snaps and yells, asking if Arthur's personal maid bolted just because she got a fever. He bursts into laughter and says this is the proof Arthur's been neglecting his own staff. He tells his brother, don't get lazy just because you've got healing magic. You can't let your guard down. The cat-eared maid can't stop thinking that one day they'll line Arthur up next to the Saintess and watch him break as tears hit. The moment Saintess Elaine is brought up, Rod's whole composure snaps like a live wire. The maid snaps that Arthur has made friends with the Saintess, then turns to Rod like, so, are you crying over this? Arthur bursts onto the scene, shouting his brother's name as Rod's rage boils over. He leans in so close it's almost a whisper, pleading for answers. Tell me how I can stop this execution that's coming. Arthur tells Rod he tracked him down for one reason, his unbelievable knowledge. He watches with bright hope in his eyes, just waiting for his brother to finally step in and lead the way. Rod is fuming out of his mind, snarling, why would you save the very man who tried to kill you? Arthur and the maid can only stare in shock as he blurts, what's gotten into my brother? He scrambles to explain that Rod's a political expert, so maybe he knows the exact way to crack this. Rod scoffs at the whole idea that brothers are meant to help each other out. He shuts the whole idea down as pure nonsense. Arthur stays cool as a blade and tells him straight up they're rivals fighting for the throne. But Rod swears a real brother doesn't have to bow his head and listen to the voices of commoners. Arthur's face twists into a cunning grin. If Rod even thinks about rebelling, Arthur will have him dragged straight into prison. He suddenly clutches his brother's hand with overflowing gratitude and it leaves Rod utterly flustered. And with that, Arthur bolts out in a panic, abandoning his brother in the dust. Rod can only yell after him, steamrolling with fury over his younger brother's bizarre behavior. The twist hits them like a punch. Both of them are left totally stunned, not knowing what just happened. Because Arthur knows firsthand that a betrayal from someone under him is basically a death sentence. Right then, the maid snaps out Rod's name, and her expression turns dead serious. She spills the bombshell. His love letter to St. Tessa Lane came back, still sealed and untouched. He rolls into Leuven's village and catches the locals badmouthing the condemned man, blaming him for all their misery. It snaps him back to his own words. Brothers are supposed to fight for each other. He strides up to the kids, and you can tell they're in the middle of a heated fight over the royal family. He can't stop thinking about Leuven, condemned by the state even though a few brave souls quietly fought back. And he's fully aware he has to hunt down anyone brave enough to stand up and fight this injustice. He trudges through the dead, silent village, and everyone wonders, can a noble really come through for them, or is this just another empty promise? But Arthur steps right up in front of them, shouting that he's already forgiven the man who attacked him. He's convinced that if enough people raise their voices, they can rip the execution out of the system and stop it. This is all part of his master plan. He's rallying people and closing in on the condemned man. His words hit the crowd like sparks, planting the first seeds of rebellion. At the exact moment they're about to execute the man, he snaps into action, launching a wild plan to rescue him with healing magic. With a confident grin, he steps up and fires up the villagers, begging them to join his side. He pictures himself stretching out his hand toward Leuven, a lone figure standing up to the whole state. But it all smashes down on him. Visions of failure and the people's grief keep haunting his mind. Right then, that familiar, imposing figure finally shows up at the estate. It's none other than his fiancée, Morgan Le Fay. They told her Arthur locked himself in his room again, like he's disappearing on purpose. Everyone's already buzzing. The prince is openly defying the public execution. Morgan can't believe it. This reclusive prince is making a shockingly public stand. Even with her usual icy attitude, she's not just showing up. She's got a real reason for hunting him down. She can feel it in her bones. Arthur's hurting bad, and watching him fight through it feels downright heartbreaking. She remembers Kay trying to soothe him, telling him to stop sinking so low. The moment hits her like a song she can't forget, and worry flickers straight across her eyes. Because she can feel every last drop of the pain wrecking him from the inside. With fresh fire in her heart, she pivots to face the head maid. Marion tells them she's finally relieved, because the execution day was rocked by protests. She's just relieved Arthur never had to step into that place and witness it firsthand. But from his room, Arthur snaps that every single thing is his fault. Morgan shouts his name at the closed door, hammering for a way in. She leans in and tells him this wasn't some silly prank. What happened was dead serious. She snaps at him and tells him straight up that he isn't the one to blame. But Arthur turns away and Kay is left staring, helpless, with worry clawing at her chest. His guilt swallows him whole, and the darkness takes over every last inch of him. Through choking tears, he swears he's the one who messed everything up, the kid who interfered with the execution. He clings to the kids' desperate hope, convinced their protest might be the one thing that saves his brother. And he remembers Morgan crashing onto the scene right as the tension snapped and violence was about to erupt. She threw her support on the table, ready to jump in and fight for their cause. But the protest erupted into chaos as the kids screamed Arthur's forgiveness over and over. In the middle of the chaos, a young girl went down hard and her brother screamed her name, terrified. The whole crowd snapped their attention to a sudden, brutal twist of fate. A sharp crack blasts through the square, wood splinters and shatters right in front of everyone. A guy clutching a bottle screams that this is it. Now they strike their chance. The kids can only stare, eyes huge, as the plan finally clicks into place, and the terror crashes down. Morgan clenches her teeth as everything spirals wildly out of control right in front of her. He clings to the memory of his wild scheme, turn the chaos into a perfect distraction. But it was already too late to stop the execution once they set it in motion. She debought every word of the plan, convinced nothing could go wrong, until the first sign of failure shattered it all. The guards get totally blindsided when the uprising erupts out of nowhere. The kids shriek for their brother while the guards scramble to wrestle control back. And in the middle of all that chaos, Arthur finally cracks and admits he just ran straight away. Morgan yells his name from the other side of the door. She hits him with the same promise he swore to keep for everyone. He still remembers Kay trying to comfort him, swearing she'd keep his pain buried and never let anyone know. Morgan's face loosens into a small, sudden look of understanding. Arthur finally hears her, and the moment the words land, he swings the door wide open. He can only blurt out her name, stunned by what he's seeing. He couldn't believe she'd haul herself all that way just to see him. She snaps around to face him, ready to unload the truth she's been holding back. And she tells him, if there's something you want to do, you can count on me too. Her sudden offer hits so hard, it even leaves Kay completely speechless and shaken. Kay tells her, I saved you, and now she can see just how hard he's been fighting to make things right. Arthur's face bursts into a grin as he finally clicks. Morgan had been thinking that exact thing the whole time. His sudden realization catches his fiancée off guard, and she's instantly thrown into a full-blown fluster. He taunts her, finally confessing, I thought you hated me the whole time, like he's just cracked the funniest secret. Morgan glances off to the side and mutters that she doesn't really hate him anymore. But Arthur points her out and admits straight up that he's still got a little fear of her lingering. A sharp voice slices through the room, saying it's only like that because he's a damn fool. He blurts out for Kay to save him. The instant danger hits, right as she shouts his name back. Then a quiet, almost beaten laugh slips through the air. Arthur whips around with a grin and asks, like it's a joke, whether she really thought he was crying. He says he's just snatching a code real quick and storms off, and Morgan is left staring after him. Kay finally exhales when she sees Prince Arthur standing on his own again. But Morgan's face stays locked in a calm, thoughtful mystery, impossible to read. She whips around to Kay and admits the maid's been having a rough time because of him. That comment blindsides Kay completely, like a punch to the gut. She can only blurt out Morgan's name, totally flustered that everyone's staring at her all at once. Morgan remembers how, as a kid, Arthur would bolt to the garden the moment she scolded him, hiding his tears out there. She tells him straight up that she can't fix his fate, but she can't help feeling how heartbreaking his situation is. As she fades into the darkness, Kay blurts her name into the night. Arthur's half-finished scheme dangled Leuven's siblings with false hope. Then everything collapsed hard and fast. He crumples to the ground in the garden, whispering apologies into the empty air. The crushing weight of his failure nearly breaks him, and all he can do is choke out, I'm sorry, while tears spill. He's convinced that even his magical diary can't rewrite who he truly is. And the book slams the truth in his face, backing his worst fears, then straight up refuses to reveal the next task. He can't stop thinking about how Kay and Morgan changed because of him. Still, he stayed that selfish kid who failed miserably, because all he cared about was saving himself. From the diary, the creature suddenly lunges out and snaps, telling Kate to stay back. It straight up tells him if he's throwing in the towel on this timeline, grab the diary, then hit the self-destruct. The creature thrusts the book toward them, making one last, horrifying offer. As darkness swallows him, Arthur throws out his hand and accepts his fate. That night, Kay felt the chill bite the air while she went to draw the curtains. She keeps watch over Arthur while he rests, and when he can finally breathe, he murmurs a quiet thank you. He sinks into silence for a beat, eyes shut tight. Then he leaned in and begged Kay to let him catch one last glimpse of her face. She peeks over the covers, softly calling his name with a warm, gentle smile. And she vows straight to his heart that she'll never leave his side, not ever. Arthur can't help but think she's just turning the drama up a notch. Later, he drifts through the grounds by himself, brooding over the rumor that thinks he's immortal. That diary's creature flashes every nightmare back in his face: starvation, getting crushed, or straight-up decapitation. With that cold, grim thought hanging in the air, a brand new chapter bursts to life. He plants himself on the edge of a dark pond, and panic crashes over him like he's already sinking. Clutching the diary to his chest, he wore quiet despair like a steel mask. He lets out a grim breath of relief. Thankfully, the water hasn't frozen solid. He's made up his mind, he's done fighting fate, and he's ready to quit this world. With one last decisive step, he plunges straight into the icy water. An icy chill snaps around him the second he plunges into the darkness. His diary slips away into the air, and a hairline crack tears across the glassy stillness. He knows the pond's center has to be deep enough to swallow him whole. But his healing magic ignites on its own, summoning a gentle glow that cuts through the darkness. And he realizes no matter how strong his power is, the cold bites and the pain still hits hard. He can almost hear Kay's voice in his ear, questioning if he really understands how freezing it feels. He plunges even deeper into the dark, and his resolve locks in tighter with every step. But one sharp thought slices through the despair and screams, no, because he knows if Kay were here, She stormed in without a second thought, sobbing with rage, clutching him close like she'd never let go. He can't stop thinking about Morgan, someone who wouldn't sneer at him but would stare with real, gut-deep worry. He can't stop thinking about Marion and the other maids, because they'd be furious with him for what he's done. Even in the middle of all this, he can't stop thinking about Elaine, Tristan, and the kids from that orphanage. Every face he's ever met, every person he's ever helped, slams into his mind like a rushing tide. And then he sobs, finally memorized every single one of their names, only to see it all get tossed aside. He drops down into the cold, dark water, letting the chills swallow him whole. The diary's creature thrusts a cruel choice in front of him: grab the book and erase everything, then start over. He flashes a shaky, sad smile, wondering if he can truly pull off everything all over again. If he can't change, he'll just keep crashing in the exact same way, over and over again. He shuts his eyes tight, totally lost, with no clue what to do next anymore. He can't stop wondering what he could have done differently. A heavy silence drops over the pond beneath a sky full of stars. Then suddenly, a tiny splash shatters the dead quiet of the night. A hand suddenly punches through the water's surface, and Arthur ends up sprawled on the ground, dripping wet and totally stunned, like his world just vanished. He jolts awake, gasping hard as he coughs up cold pond water. Staring around in a daze, he can't wrap his mind around what just happened. His sight crumbles into darkness, and the world around him falls apart into black. Then a memory hits: snowy night, his little brother Mordred leaning over him, staring down like he'd seen everything. A voice shouts that name, and Arthur's eyes blow wide with pure shock. The young Mordred from his memories just grins at him, teasing that they've been up way past their bedtime. He clings to the diary's last offer: walk away from this world and start all over. He remembers hurling himself into the pond, convinced that was the moment everything ended. So all he can do is blurt out in pure confusion, begging, "Why am I still here?" As he sprawls on the cold ground, horror creeps in. Time hasn't been reset at all. Arthur can't stop wondering why his plan blew up, while a voice in the background snaps that he's still up way too late. His younger brother slides in real clothes and whispers, "What are you muttering about?" Arthur can only barely whisper the name of the boy who will eventually kill him: Mordred. Mordred just bursts into laughter, straight up admitting he never expected to catch him out here. He leans in and tells them, "I just got back from a meeting with my supporters," only to find his older brother passed out cold on the freezing ground. Arthur can't wrap his head around it. Why did he have to run into him right now, of all times? To finally face the exact person who murdered him in the last timeline. The kid who looks so harmless, but in his hands, his entire future hangs on every move. Mordred just shoots him a warning: stay out in the snow too long and you'll catch a cold. Mordred just breaks into laughter, taunting that his brother must be seriously ill. That comment slams a fresh wave of terror into Arthur, and it hits him like a freight train. His younger brother brushes it off like it's all just fooling around, then calls him helpless to his face. He reaches out his hand and tells Arthur, "You can't stay out there in the cold." That tiny gesture throws Arthur into a full-blown panic. He's left speechless and totally flustered. Mordred shrugs off his bizarre reaction like it's nothing, and decides it's not worth a second thought. Then his gaze snaps to the magical diary and he blurts, "What is this?" Arthur snarls at him to back off, yelling that there's nothing inside at all. Mordred snorts at the idea of a blank diary, and Arthur insists, "No, it isn't what it looks like." But his brother shoots him a sly little grin like he's already read the whole play and knows every move. Mordred grins and cheerfully rubs it in. Arthur couldn't save Leuven, so she tilts her head and asks if he's finally learned his lesson. Arthur can only ask one thing: did his brother know about his plan the whole time? Mordred leans in and confirms, point blank, that he knows the exact reason their rescue attempt crashed and burned. With a chilling grin, he leans in and asks if his big brother really wants to hear the reason. Arthur just can't wrap his head around it. Why would his own brother be that cruel? Mordred leans in close, grinning, and needles him with the fact that brothers are supposed to back each other up. That taunt ignites Arthur's rage. He explodes forward, screaming his brother's name as he lunges. But Mordred just shoves him aside and sends him crashing down the snowy hill, tumbling the whole way. Arthur slammed into the snow, and the impact punched the breath clean out of him. He can only stare up in horror, already shattered by his brother's cruelty. With a vicious grin, Mordred drops the brutal truth behind why he failed. A memory hits Arthur hard, seeing his own healing as a kid, while his brother spits out the truth. He failed because he's just too kind to let himself win. He remembers younger Arthur, glowing with relief, thanking him right after the healing. But even then, Mordred still snapped that he was a fool for doing something selfless. That memory detonates in Arthur like a bomb, Rage surges through him as he screams that his brother is the real fool. Mordred calmly cuts through Arthur's efforts and declares that no matter how hard he tries, nothing will ever change. Then he leans in and cold, calculating fire stares out of his eyes. He taunts Arthur for finally getting it that saving everyone is impossible, and reminding him that every commoner is a person, not a faceless everyone. He hands the diary back and tells his brother, "Don't quit yet, there's still hope." But Arthur yanks the book away with a sharp slap, screaming at him to shut up. He roars at his brother to shut up, refusing to hear another second of those taunts. But Mordred calmly cuts in and tells Arthur the truth. He's the one who's wrong about being saved. He clings to every lesson, every face that showed him pain and pushed him to keep trying his best. And that's why he won't stop. He's determined to save every single one of them, because he's betting that if he does, they'll finally save him back. Raw emotion crashes over him, and before he can stop it, tears spill. His desperate cry tears out of his mouth. Mordred just bursts into laughter, ripping his brother apart for acting like a total kid. He swears he'll stop Arthur cold, and drops one last chilling threat before it all spirals. Arthur turns and walks off, swearing he'll study harder, learn everything he can, and rebuild this world one last time. A brand new morning breaks over the castle, and it screams one thing: his comeback is on and the fight is reborn. And the first person he reaches for is his fiancée, Morgan. Morgan listens, and you can see the faint weight of exhaustion sitting on her face. He looks her straight in the eyes and tells her, right there, that he's got a favor he needs. He's determined to master real-world politics so he can forge a fair world where nobles and commoners both get their share. And he swears she's the only person in the world he can ask for something like that. His fresh determination starts to surge outward, quietly reshaping the world one tiny shift at a time. Out in the fields, a pack of kids push through the blazing sun, working without pause. A rider on horseback closes in, points them out as Leuven's siblings, the same ones who'd been executed. He tells them, since our guardian turned criminal, our future got ripped wide open, and nobody knows where it's going. Then boom, he drops unexpected news. Starting next month, the state is sending them a subsidy. Back in his study, a tutor leans in and demands Arthur explain. Was that new ordinance his brainchild, and why did he hide his involvement from everyone? He tells them straight up, "Don't thank me, I don't want your gratitude because you don't actually know the real me." The tutor just stands there stunned as Arthur flashes a knowing smile like he already saw it coming. Now that it's settled, he calmly declares that their lesson is starting right now. He knows a little act like this won't buy forgiveness, but it's all he's got right up until a voice suddenly yells his name. A bunch of kids burst through the door, grinning like crazy, yelling that it was finally break time. Betty and the rest of the orphanage kids beam with gratitude because Morgan pulled strings to get them into his lessons. Yisu, another kid, grumbles that studying is crushingly hard, unlike Beatty, who can't get enough books. Arthur just slurps his tea, gritting his teeth because Yisu isn't even bothering to try. Then the tutor fires a question at the whole class, demanding to know what they think is the kingdom's biggest problem. Arthur leans in, keeps his voice low, and gives a quiet yes to the question. Yisu wrestles with the text, his eyes scrambling as the words refuse to make sense. But Beatty drops a shockingly deep truth. Every common person is an individual, not a single copy. Arthur breaks it down, flat out telling them that this noble's wheat monopoly can only end one way: an uprising is coming. Yisu snaps at him right away, accusing him of treason, her horror exploding as she hears what he says about the nobility. But Arthur stays cool and tells them he's just replaying every failure from his past life, the kind of lesson he paid for the hard way. Yisu's still wrestling with the reading, and the lesson keeps hauling him behind. Betty proudly shows Arthur, already done with his book. Then he jabs a finger at the next one, swearing he'll make the founding festival a hit, and Arthur's gut drops when he realizes that it's his magical diary. The diary slips out of Beatty's hands the second he realizes this isn't a normal textbook at all. Arthur snatches it up in a flash, and right when he spots the fresh new entry popping onto the pages, he blurts out an apology. He can't believe it because he's dead sure only he can see the diary's text. He leans in again and his eyes catch it. Those letters aren't glowing like they normally do. A gut-churning shock slams into him. Someone else has scribbled in his magical diary.